Everybody, I'll call to order the December 11th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mr. Rugg, I believe we have 8 voting members. Giovanni's not going to be here. We have a quorum, correct?
Correct.
Fantastic. We'll start with some more administrative board work. We've got approval of minutes.
Minutes came in this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to look at them thoroughly. And Tony, I believe, has some changes to be made on them.
Thank you, Mr. Rugg. I do have, I noticed at the end of the minutes, it appears that the end of the meeting just ended at a certain point, and we actually continued to discuss after that. And so I'm going to give Kelly in writing this phrase, which I believe should be at the end of the minutes. Well, can decide next week if you want to do that, or we can do it right now. But what it should say at the very end is the consensus of the planning board was to take no action on a building moratorium at this time. Short and sweet. Right now, the minutes just end like we stopped talking about it, and that's actually not true because we did have a further conversation about having a consensus and a snapshot in time and all that kind of stuff. So that's my proposal for the minutes. I'm going to give it to Kelly, and you decide if you want to add it or not.
Could we, Kelly, do you want to add them to the minutes, and then at the next meeting, we can make a decision on them?
Yes,
Or
I
send
can do
them
that.
out again to the whole board.
Resend them.
Yeah.
I will have Alicia do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. D, that worked for you?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Fantastic. All right. Regional impacts.
None this evening.
Fantastic. Discussions with town staff.
All set?
Fantastic. All right. Let's get on to some new plans. We have a public hearing on an application for formal review of a compliance alternative request per section 2.2.3, the Woodmont Commons PUD, relating to block type, lot type at 36 Pillsbury Road, map 10, lot 42, zoned AR1, Woodmont Commons PUD. Procopio Companies is the applicant, and Pillsbury Realty Development LLC is the owner. If you want to come on up. I don't believe there's really anything for completeness on this.
No, I think there's just for compliance.
Yeah. So do we need to vote?
You can just accept it as complete. There are no
Yeah, there's no
checklist
real
items or anything
okay.
like that, but just
So
accept it.
we will accept this as complete. Miss Gandia, good evening. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Fantastic.
Thank you. And here with me is David Roach from Procopio Companies.
How are you?
Good. It is to avoid an accident on 93.
That's always a good thing. That's always a good thing.
Out there.
It's getting a little crazy.
It's becoming more frequent, unfortunately.
So, good evening. My name is Laura Gandia, and I am an attorney with Divine Millimat and Branch, here representing the applicant, Procopio Companies. We are here before you again to present our formal request for a compliance alternative. The planning board is familiar with this request, as the matter was discussed previously on 2 separate occasions. September 11th was a conceptual discussion introducing the project and the design concept. October 9th was a conceptual discussion regarding the various mechanisms to achieve our development goals. At the October meeting, town staff and this board concurred that a compliance alternative was the appropriate vehicle to achieve the development goals. And this mechanism also coincided with the PUD's intent, and that intent is to create regulations and to establish a process that allows flexibility in phasing and in the actual development plan. We have had additional meetings with town staff, and we are here to formally present our request. And I know there's a lot of paperwork. I do have a condensed
Sure.
thing that I think would be easier for us to go through.
Sure.
Can I approach?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we love condensed.
I do. I know you do.
Remember the old Reader's Digest?
And I went through it all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Penta? Dr. Penta?
I love the correction.
Do you have enough? You need more?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so as an introduction, as the board is aware, Procopio Company seeks to construct within the town of Londonderry a unique and exciting housing opportunity consisting of approximately 250 rental units located at 36 Pillsbury Road and a cottage core atmosphere encompassing the Woodmark Commons plan unit development, goals of creativity, and a development facilitating choice among citizens as to where and how they want to live, and establishing a framework that will deliver a walkable environment. So the property, and that's on the first page, page 1, the subject property, 36 Pillsbury Road, map 10, lot 42, is zoned AR1 in Woodmark Commons PUD. It boasts about 94 acres of vacant land, formerly operated as an apple orchard. The property, owned by Pillsbury Development, is part of the 2013 Woodmark Commons PUD, consisting of WC subareas 1, 7, 8, 10, and 11. So the project, again, is an innovative design concept consisting of 250 single-family homes on a single lot in a cottage court-style atmosphere with about 7 clusters or cottage courts, each with its own shared open space. We are anticipating various recreational trails and green space abound the property for the residents to enjoy. Roads within the development will be private and maintained by the owner. So the compliance alternative, I think I bored the board last time with going through all the details of the compliance alternative, but unfortunately I have to go into it a little bit more. When the PUD was created, it was recognized the need for flexibility and for ideas that were not envisioned at the time of its adoption. The PUD spoke directly to that on page 45, and it stated, in some cases, the underlying public purposes may be accomplished as well or better through alternative design and development approaches that have not been envisioned with the range of the PUD regulations and standards within this document. As a result, applicable portions of the PUD regulations and standards may also be implemented through compliance alternatives that are agreed to by both the planning board and the project proponents. In such cases, the planning board shall use the planning and design principles as criteria for determining that the compliance alternative achieves the underlying public purposes for any specific regulation or standard. And that's section 2.21 they also refer to. So the applicable, but page 1 was the sub-areas. Page 2 is the overall design concept. So you see, and you have seen this before, we have various clusters. Throughout, we have the one roadway looping through, and then you have side rows for each of the clusters. Page 3 is what I'm talking about now. Those are the planning and design principles. So this board is tasked with determining whether or not our compliance alternative meets those 5 highlighted design criteria, and those are aesthetically attractive features, connected walkable neighborhoods, quality site design, quality architectural design, and potential impacts and mitigation needs. So from that, we are seeking basically 3 different standards than what exist in the PUD today. We're seeking relief from the block type, the lot type, and the road design. As you are aware, the PUD has 5 block types. None of them fit this particular design concept, so we are asking the board to create a new block type. And if you look at page 5, you'll see where our proposed standards are. So we have the block type and the lot type, and as this board is aware, this project will not have any individual lots, so we don't have a lot type to offer. So the standard would be there is no lot type for this particular project. So the block type, you can name it whatever you want, but I called it a master cottage court. That's just what I thought would be appropriate. I think it needed some type of name to be referenced if the board is so inclined to approve this request. So then I defined it, saying this block type allows for the creation of a master cottage court design at 36 Pillsbury Road for the development of approximately 250 cottage court style single-family dwelling units dispersed into no less than 7 courts clusters. There will be no individual lots, and the development shall be according to the cottage court performance standards in section 2.2.3, which provide for and are amended as follows. So then you look at the PUD, they do have performance standards for cottage courts, but because we're not doing your typical cottage courts with the block type and the lot type, we had to tweak those particular cottage court standards. And you'll see in red where we did the tweaks. So we went through and we have single-family cottage court developments are permitted in all sub-areas that permit multifamily and single-family uses, and single-family is the addition. Minimum lot sizes are eliminated, as I already discussed, and the development shall consist of one master lot. And then I put this elimination and everything else in black is what is already there. So we're not increasing the density, we're not changing the density, we're not doing anything to that particular paragraph B. On paragraph C, in the PUD, we're not changing. Paragraph D, it says unit structure separation shall be a minimum of 6 feet. Units shall be located no closer than 9 feet from any right-of-way. And again, because there's no lot type, we had to put in a separation. And that basically coincides with what the PUD has for cottage courts. I believe it says the minimum of 3. So if you do 3 from each house, that's how we came up with the 6. E, we did not touch. F, I added in the word cluster. And I also noted that perimeter units, those located outside the court clusters are permitted, because I didn't want to get into a situation when somebody's looking at the project design and they see some of those houses located a further bit down the road and they say, well, those aren't facing, an open area. So that's why I was calling those perimeter units. G and H are all the same. And then for our road design, again, because this is not a typical subdivision, we're not subdividing, these are private roads maintained by the owner as part of the master lot. We went in and we tweaked the road design standards. Again, it's going to be a private road. The roads are going to be designed to accommodate the truck turn radius. We have a country-style road for the road edge treatment. The sidewalks, we don't want sidewalks on the main loop road because the intent is for people to use the cottage courts where we will have walkable trails within each cottage court. So the intent is not to have people walking on that individual loop road. If you look at the plan that we submitted, you can see where the trail systems are to get into that. So there's trail systems all throughout, as you can see on the screen behind you, and those also allow for connectivity into each of the cottage courts. So with that, we would prefer to have people congregate and walk along in the open space in the cottage court area, not on that main road, and that's why we're asking for the elimination of the sidewalks. And for the street lightings, we're hoping to have that at all of the intersections. And again, a lot of the lighting in that type of feel we want within the cottage courts. The focus is to have that community feel within the cottage courts, not on that main loop system road. So if we go back, so that's what we want to do. And then if you go back to what we have to talk about in order to convince the board, that's going to be those standards that are on page 3. So I'm just going to flip back to page 3 and talk about those 5 standards that have to do with the block type, the lot well, the elimination of a lot type and the road design. So the first criteria, or principle, as it's called in the PUD, is aesthetically attractive features. And that's described as the features of the PUD subdivision and/or site plan will enhance the aesthetics of the Woodmont Commons PUD as viewed from publicly accessible roads, streets, path, or open space or adjacent to the PUD. Our proposed compliance alternative enhances the aesthetics of the Woodmont Common PUD as viewed publicly from Pillsbury Road and the surrounding adjacent roads or within or adjacent to our project. The proposed cottage court design concept is a unique and innovative approach which develops creating housing opportunities for many. The aesthetics of the cottage court and the site layout and design allow for more open space than what was initially envisioned, while creating at least 7 unique cottage court clusters, all with individual attributes. The concept is aesthetically pleasing as viewed from publicly accessible roads, as the layout of the houses and the significant open space creates a rural feel while still allowing housing opportunities. The alternative road design complements the cottage court style, providing for more open space. The second criteria is connected walkable neighborhoods, and that's described as the characteristics of the improvements or development will contribute to a walkable community that is linked to other portions of the Woodmont Commons PUD or publicly accessible pedestrian routes adjacent to the PUD. Again, if you look at our plan, the cottage court development scheme contributes very much so to a walkable community within each of the clusters, given that feel that I believe the PUD was intended to promote. And the design of the existing roadways in the trail system creates another opportunity for residents in each court and cluster to connect. The trail system within the project is part of the overall walkable design concept inherent in the PUD and what the PUD wants to see. The project is intended to connect with the proposed rail system that is coming off of Caspi Lane. So when all that area gets developed, we envision everything being connected, and that is part of the intent of the PUD. The alternative road design standards complement, again, the cottage court style, providing for more open space while allowing residents to access the common shared open space within each cluster. The third criteria is the quality site design. The site design will provide public benefits in the term of sustainable use of resources, visual quality from public vantage points, and complementary relationships to adjacent land or development. The project, again, and the site design yields significant public benefits by providing and promoting sustainable use of resources, by maximizing open space and green space, protecting wetlands, enhancing visual quality of vantage points, offering open and green space with recreational trails, setback and distance from the public right-of-way, and complement the adjacent residential uses, providing a residential base for existing and upcoming commercial development. The project amplifies a Londonderry rural feel by conserving significantly more concentrated open space than what the PUD initially envisioned. The alternative road designs, again, complement the cottage courts, providing for more open space while allowing residents to access the common shared open space. The fourth criteria is the quality architectural design, and that is described as a design that will follow architectural standards and feature complementary relationships to adjacent land or development as viewed again from publicly accessible roads, streets, or paths, or open space with or adjacent to the PUD. So our response to that is the project, again, will follow the architectural design standards that's provided for in the PUD. We're not looking for any relief from that, while complementing the existing and adjacent residential land use as viewed publicly from multiple vantage points. The cottage court design mimics the Catesby Lane development by providing accessible walkable and recreational trails and publicly accessible open space. The alternative road design standard complements the cottage court style again, providing for more open space by allowing residents to access the shared open space. And the fifth one is the potential impacts and mitigation needs. That is described as the proposed PUD subdivision and site plan will either have either have no material effect on the potential municipal impacts or will reduce such impacts. Associated mitigation requirements will employ the PUD master plan regulations and standards. So our plan will have no material effect on municipal impacts as there's no increase in density. We're sticking with the allowable density that's allowed for this site. The roads are private and will be maintained by the owner. Wetland impacts are being minimized while maximizing and again preserving open space. So we believe that we have met those 5 planning and design principles. We also believe that the project is fully compliant with the overall intent of the PUD master plan, and that the project envisions a master cottage court providing a walkable, friendly, and connected community atmosphere with an accessible trail system, open space, preservation of land, and a sub-area designated for residential use. And I also put in my narrative what the goals were of the master plan, and I went through each of those goals and I demonstrated how we meet each of the goals and intent of the master plan to accommodate development in an environmentally responsible manner, create a development that will, upon completion, facilitate choice among citizens as to where and how they want to live. Again, this board and the applicant have had multiple discussions how this is a niche that's not existing in Londonderry. And it's establishing a framework for development that will deliver a walkable environment that comprises a variety of uses. And it's in alignment with the accepted standards and performance. And it allows for the development to create a positive and economic impact for the town. So we believe, and I will defer to everything else in our packet because I know I'm talking a lot and there's a lot in there, but there's unfortunately a lot to say so the board can fully understand what we're trying to do and what our request is. So with that, we believe that we have provided sufficient documentation justifying our request, and we respectfully request that the board consider approving it.
Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to start with our town staff. See if they have any comments. We'll come to the board, and then we'll open it up to the public. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would agree that the applicant has submitted the appropriate documentation representing their compliance with the 5 criteria that you should be focusing on for the compliance alternative requests. And just as a reminder, this is just for the compliance alternative requests. The applicant will come forward with a full site plan for the full site plan review process. And so the board should stick to those 5 criteria this evening and the applicant's responses in your discussions. That's all I have.
Thank you. I will open it up to the board. Board, do we have any comment? I saw you going.
Oh.
No? Arthur?
Ann wants to go. Oh, okay. I think they've done quite a well job at defining the criteria and demonstrating to us that the criteria is met. You know, it's I really don't have any arguments there. I think the real nitty-gritty is going to come with the site planning process, as that involves a lot more and that involves detail. So right now, this is conceptual level and just sorting out, and the whole Woodmont master plan was designed for the flexibility anyway. So, because we know when it was designed back in 12, 13, because I think it was, it started in 2010, the whole process. So we knew that in 2010, when it gets to be 2020, 2030, times change and things will be different, and we needed that flexibility in there. So I think it's using that flexibility well.
Thank you, Mr. Rugg. Anything else from the board?
I've got a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
So, Laura, just excuse me, just a quick question. In your introduction memo that we received, you talked about approximately 250 units. How do you define approximately?
Well, it can't be any more than 250 units.
It'll be 250 units.
250
It's on the
units.
plan right now, so, I mean, if we were to lose a unit because of some sort of conflict, you know, the intent, then that's our limit.
So it's going to be plus or minus less than 5, right?
It would only be minus from that, it wouldn't be plus.
Okay, great. So I don't know if you can answer this question or if we need Pillsbury to answer the question, but going back to the original vision for WC8, do you know what types of housing units were planned for that area? And how many were planned for that
There
area?
was a variety of lot size requirements. I do know that because of the multitude of different sub-areas. There was
Yep.
a different scale along.
Mr. Smith,
How you doing?
it's like you were looking for him.
Kevin Smith, consultant with Pillsbury Realty. So the original vision was that they would all be single-family lots. Between this sub-area, WC 7, 8, 9, I think 6, maybe 10, it allowed for a total of 300, which is what the total Procopio program is. What's interesting, though, is that you've often probably heard that architects and engineers don't get along so well. The architects drew up that plan. There was never any engineering done for there. And when we did the actual surveying of this property, what it revealed is that if you aligned, you could not align the homes the way they're laid out on that particular plan. You can get up to the allowed density, the 300, by doing it this way. But if you to do it all just single-family lots, like what's shown on that particular drawing, and it is just a drawing. It was never a surveyed, engineered plan. The topo doesn't allow to get it in the configuration where it is. And in fact, if you look at it, it merges onto the other side of Hovey Road. Essentially, there's a break in Hovey Road. And I don't even know how you would do that at this stage of the game, but that's what was envisioned there in the original plan.
So all single-family homes, 3, 4-bedroom homes, do you have any feel for what that was? I'm just trying to get a feel for how much population change we're looking at from the original plan versus what the new plan is.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that this will probably result in fewer population than more, because I think those were envisioned to be 3 and 4 bedroom units, which I don't believe these are all.
1 to 4 units we're talking about for this project here, 1 to 4 units.
We're likely not going to do many, if any, 4-bedroom units. We're targeting primarily 2 and 3-bedroom units, with the majority being, I think, it's pretty closely even between the 2 and 3-bedroom units. So they're smaller than you would typically see in a single lot for sale.
And the other thing I would just point out, too, is that, and this was brought up the last time Procopio was in, is that this sub-area also allows for commercial uses as well, which is not a part of their program. But that goes back to the point of you could actually have additional density in this area by adding in commercial components to it.
And so then so thank you for that. And my other question, so don't run away yet, is open space with the original idea compared to what we're talking about with the new idea.
Yeah.
How much is the difference there?
My understanding, and Laura, do you want to speak to this?
Well, I can if you want to.
Yeah.
So the cottage court, if you look at the requirements, they require a certain amount of open space for each cluster, and we're significantly exceeding what they want for the cottage court.
No,
But in
what
the
I-
original
I
plan-
in the
Yeah, I
in
think
this
what
plan,
he's
there's-
asking, what he's asking is
It's
open
this
space
sliver.
from the original concept of these WC 7 and 8 to what's being presented.
WC 8 called for 10.
There is a small section that was defined as open
think they
space, I
did.
believe. Or what is
10
that?
acres, I think it says.
Conserve green space with trail system,
It doesn't give a-
but it doesn't actually give you a
No.
dimension.
And the intent, and that's, I think, what you're asking for.
Or, no, here it is. It minimal total 10 acres, conserve green space, shared open space 1 acre.
So the
So
original
it's
plan.
far,
was-
far beyond that.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to answer the questions for you, but
No.
we're probably going to see less population with the plan that's being proposed, that full build out and more open space.
Correct. Yeah.
Kelly, could you put on the presentation, 36 Pillsbury Road Conceptual Site Plan Review Meeting, it's 25 pages. Can you put on page 22? I think this will help answer what Lynn's asking.
This, their original
Um,
presentation?
yeah, I think it's that one. Yep.
Yeah, we did originally show that slide.
This is from September here.
This is the original
Yeah.
presentation.
Oh.
Which it does
I-
show that.
it-
That's where
Oh no, that's not, yeah, go to page 21 real quick. One more down. We must be on a different, there we go. I think that helps answer a little bit of what you're asking, Lynn. To
That was
me,
the vision.
Visually it does, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't give me the numbers. right?
yeah, no, I know.
It's gonna be a written word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. I think from a visual standpoint, it helps out a little bit.
So that center
know what you're
sub
trying
area
to
per the document requires a minimum of 1 acre of shared open space and 10 of conserved green space, which looks to be pretty comparative to what's shown in green on that plan.
Yep.
So we're obviously far exceeding that.
And then to Kevin Smith's point, there is no commercial property being developed in this area per your plan.
And we looked at that initially, and it just didn't seem to us to be something that would be well supported by the population at that area, given the density of commercial that isn't all that far away.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Mr. D.
Did you have something first?
No, go ahead.
So, just to take another bite of the apple, doing it this way, I'm gonna make a generalization, is gonna be about the same density, number of people. It's gonna produce about the same amount of people as the other way with this, all the single family, just the single family, whatever, quarter acre lots or whatever it was gonna be.
Correct.
Is that a fair statement? About
It
the
would
same or
produce
less?
The same or less.
The same or less, but not more.
Not more, it'd be the same number of dwelling units, likely smaller, fewer people.
Right. And secondly, doing it this way provides more green space than what was on the original plan.
It would certainly provide more common green space. Obviously, if you're doing those single-family lots, they would have had their own private lawn, but those would have been privatized to those users, and these are shared in common, which we also will be inviting the public in via connections, so it doesn't
Right, yeah, and
require-
the typical human thinks about open space as
As
something
open
that
to all of us.
everybody can use.
I'm just making that
right?
clear, yeah.
And so this new concept provides more of that than the original concept. Thank you.
And I saw you raise your hand a couple times.
Yeah, I have a question about, I'm noticing all the trails in your proposal. Now, are you planning on leaving apple trees in there? What do you plan on doing?
Absolutely. There's going to be, we're gonna leave the apple trees where they are in, survivable condition.
Right.
We're gonna go through that, but we're not clearing them
Add to
out.
that, about that, the water flow through the property from the
So
north.
the existing wet area will remain protected. It's a protected wetland.
Okay, I'm glad about that. That natural area, and I know you have a lot of rock towards the surface of that area. It's part of the natural beauty of it, I think. Hopefully you can include that in it. At first, when I saw a slightly different plan, it seemed like it'd be butting up against the western boundary of that property. Well, it's this side in the original plans. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but then I kept on going in the packet, and this proposal came up. It's a lot better than I originally thought. I'm not saying it doesn't look nice, but as far as other areas, like the area on the northeast portion of this parcel,
Yep.
where the cemeteries are, what is going to be that open area you have there? It looks like an L.
Yeah, so we preserved the buffer from the cemetery so that we would, be more respectful and not have these houses right up on top of that. It is the existing apple orchard. However, most of those trees, if not all, are pretty much removed at that point. Our intent would be to keep that in the state it is now, and perhaps plant some trees to provide some visual buffering. We haven't gotten yet to that detail. I'd also note that some portions of that, and it may be, when you visit this property, when you look at an aerial, it's not readily apparent how much protected wetland there actually is on this property, because a lot of those areas that when you look at the, kind of tractor ruts that go through, when they get darker, that's actually a wetland. We're not gonna be able to touch those areas. So some of those areas are gonna remain as is as a result of just their protected status. But we would be looking to kind of keep most of these areas that aren't the specific cottage court lawns, or open space between the units, in the state they are now, only adding perhaps some trails, maybe some, railings, things like that to keep people from going outside of those areas, but we want to keep it, as you're describing, in its natural state. I think it's the natural beauty that we like to preserve it. It's also why we concentrated the development towards the Hovey Road side, which is where most of those trees had already been cleared out. So it made sense for that to be where the development occurs and where the existing trees are, to try to keep as many of those in place.
Well, one of the requirements was originally to keep a row of trees on the Hovey Road
So
side.
Those would remain. To be clear, what is along Hovey Road, in I believe we have to keep, or we plan on keeping 2 or 3 rows of those. I'm referring to more the greater swath that is hundreds of feet in as you look
Right.
at the plan.
I know
Those are
the
all cleared
area,
out, yeah.
the whole area. I appreciate you leaving it in the natural area. I thought I read something about an infill at some commercial. Is there anything being thought of for that
We're not
property?
proposing
And how about near Pillsbury Road?
The challenge with Pillsbury Road is the topography. So it's a
Is
hill,
what?
it's
Excuse me.
topography. It's a hill right up. So
Okay, yeah,
if we were to include any commercial there, which we're not proposing to do, it would require excavating and creating walls, things like that. That really are going to take away from that
Mm-hmm.
area there, and we don't really have a desire to do commercial on this property or this project.
okay. And I noticed there's no proposed joint between this property and the one to the west of it that you own. Is that
So-
eventually going to be brought into the,
So there, and maybe this
Fold there?
isn't quite the most current, there will be a either gated and or, discontinuous connection there, because we would want to at least create a continuous route through for emergency vehicle purposes as may be necessary. But the intention being, with this being a single lot rental community, and likely the other portion, or the other portion being a for sale product, we didn't know if there would be we really would think that keeping those separate from a vehicular perspective makes some sense, but there would be pedestrian and emergency vehicle access between the two.
okay. And you said the trails in here are all private?
They're private, but we'll be open to the, we're gonna have public connections, right? So they're private in the sense that we'll be owning and maintaining them.
Yeah.
But this isn't gonna be gated keep out trails. It's just like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like
No,
public, not private,
I really appreciate all the natural areas you're going to leave
Yeah,
there.
we think it's great. So what makes this project really exciting for us is this is not just taking a property and giving it all away to the houses. It's working with land. We like it.
There were originally some peach trees in there, too. You might be able to find
If
those.
you can find them.
Yeah.
My neighbor back in near Boston had one. It was like kind of cool. I didn't realize those grew here until I found peaches all over the backyard.
Thank you, Ann.
Thanks.
Mr. D.
So, sticking to these 5 points that we're supposed to talk about is really hard
Yeah.
for me as one board member, because I have a list of probably 200 questions or more.
I'm really hard. I'm not answering them.
Yeah, and so, it's really hard to not, get
To not
right,
get to
get
the next
right
step?
into it.
To not get
That's
into the site plan side
That's
of
not
things.
why we're here.
Like I wanted to start answering questions like, yeah, there's gonna be more
So-
trails than are shown on here.
Yeah,
Like,
so I want to be cognizant of the fact that we're only talking about these 5 things tonight, and then we're gonna have a lot more public hearings where we can talk about more stuff that I have fun with,
And why is it the 5 things only? Because that's what the PUD says?
because that's what the PUD says.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, so thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is a public hearing at some point.
Yep. Anything else from the board? All right. This is a public hearing, so we will open up public comment. If anybody would like to come forward, please state your name and address at the podium.
Hi, my name is Bob Lees, 21 Kit Lane, been there for 46 years. And that property, when I first moved there, was woods, and then turned into an orchard, and now being developed. But I'm interested in that when 13 years ago, when this purchase was done and PUD development was brought in, a lot of discussion was said that any development that was abutted an existing neighborhood would be 1 acre lots. on the old one that you showed up on page 21, I believe it was, you see the 1 acre lots that abutted Kit Lane. On this conceptual drawing right now, I don't see it. Second question I would have is, I see a line going through to Kit Lane. I believe that is an easement. Is that going to be a roadway? Is that going to be, what is that? Is that a trail? What is that?
So the intention of that specifically was to create a walking trail access point that the neighborhood could come in and enjoy these trails.
So Kit Lane.
From Kit Lane.
Okay.
So to make sure that you're
Okay,
100%
so-
allowed to come.
Okay,
in.
so it's just going to be a trailway, not a road.
It's just a 10-foot wide
Okay,
trail.
well, okay, that's, I know that's been an easement since I've been there, so, and there's no roadways going into Kit Lane or Hovey?
No.
Just all access
It's
points
all-
to Pillsbury?
It's all via Pillsbury. We may end up with a need for a secondary access off Hovey for emergency vehicles,
Okay.
but not for.
Okay, so then I guess my biggest question is what are we doing with the property that abuts Kit Lane? They've already put the big, huge water tank in there behind my friend Jack Martin's house, and they ran a 20-inch water line down all the way behind that stone wall all the way to Pillsbury. So how does that consist of the protecting the neighborhood with the 1 acre lots?
We were actually cognizant of that this is the backyard of the homes along Kit Lane. And Ann had pointed out that the original plan did show houses on this side of this internal driveway.
Correct.
We pulled all of the houses away from the back of Kit Lane, and so there's only the roadway, which is, I believe, 100 feet plus away from
The property line.
the property line, which would give you the same level of buffer, if not more, than what the individual lots.
Not really, when you're talking all kinds of
No, I'm saying in
traffic.
terms of the distance
Yeah.
from the structures to the rear property line. But, so that was, the intent was to maintain a naturalized buffer across the other side of the roadway. Understand that doesn't mean there's nothing.
Correct, I understand
That
what you're
was the
saying,
intent.
but,
So that's why you'll see that doesn't continue until we get down past into this section where it butts the other.
well, that the other part is the development for future development, which is for sale.
Yes.
And the other question I would have is, what type of rents are we talking about? Are people gonna be able to afford these places?
So that's actually part of the reason why we see this as a, kind of fitting a need. And obviously, this is outside of what is before us tonight. I'm more than willing to answer the
Yeah,
question.
no,
You
I'll let you talk. I know we're kind of well beyond what the scope is
Okay.
tonight, but we can talk about it.
So it would fit into, and obviously, when we start talking numbers nowadays,
Yeah.
everything sounds bad, right?
Yeah,
We expect these would be a few $100 or so more than you would pay for an apartment of equivalent size in the Woodmont development, for example. Someone's gonna want to pay a few extra dollars to
Okay.
have that on individual outdoor space. That could run from in the mid-$2,000s to $3,000 a month,
okay.
which sadly today is far less than a mortgage, but also not a small number.
Well, again, I guess my biggest concern is the 1 acre lot. The roadway doesn't really do us any good. We've been there for been there for over 50 years with only maybe 10, 12 houses that are gonna butt that on Kit Lane, and you're putting a roadway down there 100 feet away from my backyard with 250 homes that it's gonna service. Really not fond of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Anybody else? All right. Seeing nothing from the public, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Board, do we have any additional comments to this? Please, not all at once.
Oh, I have just one last question. Is there going to be any kind of demarcation between the neighbors and your property, like a fence or anything?
Between Kit Lane and this
Yeah, or
property.
is there anything
We
going to be?
weren't envisioning anything.
I think,
Stonewall?
and I think
Site plan,
we're really
I know,
talking
I know
about
I'm
site
pushing.
plan
I'm just,
level things.
you know,
That
for their,
we gotta
I think
focus
that's a
on,
detail we could work out.
yeah,
okay.
we have to focus on,
To be clear, I'm
on
not
what we
familiar
have.
with the existing condition along that property line right now anyways.
Okay.
Did you close public comment,
I
Mr. Chair?
did.
Can I
Thank you.
make one comment, please?
Candy.
I did notice, and I talked to Kelly about this on your staff review memo, the motion, if the board is so inclined to recommend that, you may want to consider tweaking that because the language there has to do with 120 days for site plan approval,
Yeah,
information like
One in
that?
front of you is correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
so-
one right here. is
Okay,
good.
I know Kelly
Yeah.
and I talked about that, I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with that.
Yep.
So thank you, Kelly.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I also did want to point out
Sure.
one other thing that I noticed in this handout, so I
Sure.
don't know if this is consistent with what you see in the staff memo. It identifies the street light spacing of every 44 feet. We do not intend to do that. We don't think that's in keeping with the natural.
Not very neighborhood-like, yeah.
Nor going to be good for the
Yeah.
Kit Lane backyards having a light every 44 feet. Our intention would be to have it at intersections for safety purposes, but beyond that, you know, the lighting you'd see in a residential neighborhood coming off of the houses is sufficient for us.
There are
Thank
many
you.
streetlights around town anyway.
But this is going to be benefiting from that.
So I want to, we talked about it a little while ago. I want to go back to the original intent of this area and the density of homes that were in this area was not to exceed 300, correct?
Inclusive of.
Inclusive of the dog leg, if you want to call it that. I think Mr. D said it. You are really going to be at that same density. You're presenting not more than 250 here, and you're looking to put down the road an additional 50 on that dog leg. So you are meeting that density. That was already, you know, inside of this original proposal for the PUD. Your density is going to essentially be the same. Your layout is different, and does essentially create, to me, it feels as though it creates a larger green area for what, compared to what was originally proposed, which you said I think was 10 acres. I would say that this proposal is probably doubling the size of that green area. Is that fair?
Probably more than doubling. but-
Yeah. For lack of a better terms,
Yeah,
you're
that's definitely fair.
doubling what the originally proposed green space was. You're essentially doubling it, if not more. You are putting in a smaller home, which theoretically should have less of a population, because at the end of the day, you can only fit so many people in a two-bedroom home, correct? You are not proposing any commercial development inside of this sub-area that originally, if you look actually right where Hovey Road was, it looks, where this goes through Hovey Road, it looks like they were going to essentially have a commercial area right there that would drive in additional traffic, people into these streets, roadways, so on and so forth. You're not proposing that. So there's going to be less of a traffic impact on the proposed development than what the original, for lack of a better term, sketch was on this. I do agree with, you know, what Mr. Lees was saying on, I gotta pull up the right thing here. You know, WC7 was originally put in place to create a buffer of like-sized lots against other lots inside of the development. I do agree that this particular development, or the way this is setting up, does get rid of that, I don't want to call it protection, because it's not necessarily protection, but gets rid of that similar lot abutting each lot feel. But with that seems to be coming a trade of much more green space, theoretically less traffic because there is no commercial area in it, and theoretically less of a population because the houses are smaller. So I do recognize that there's a change there on what's going on to the buffer. This original presentation, was it last month or the month before? How long ago were you here? 2 months ago?
September and October.
September and October. So this original presentation did have units much closer to that property line. And this is really something that's going to be discussed more at a site plan level. But I see that you've put forward an effort to recognize the concerns of the board, which was to a degree trying to protect a little bit of that original reasoning for the WC section, WC7 section. And essentially what I feel like I'm seeing in this plan, compared to the first one that was presented, is the roadway of your, and again, this is really site plan, but I want to make sure we all understand it and are on the same page. It almost looks to me that the roadway you're presenting is very close to in line with the roadway that was on the original sketch from the PUD. Is that pretty safe to say?
Yes, I couldn't say the exact dimensions, but it's.
It looks pretty close.
That was the
Yeah.
intent.
So the roadway positioning is the same. However, you did recognize the concerns of the boards, and you have taken away any housing that was on to the west of that roadway, and have created a bit more of a buffer there than what you originally presented with a few months ago. So I appreciate you hearing the board. I think you've also heard from the public tonight that it's a concern, and you're showing that you're in the right direction of trying to respect well, it may not be the same size lots. You are really still getting the same distance between what was there. So I appreciate that. Before we move on, does the board have anything else? All right. We need a recommendation. I would be looking for a motion from one of our board members of how we would like to move forward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
we'll entertain a motion. I will move that we grant conditional approval to the compliance alternative request for section 2.2.3 of the Woodmont Commons PUD relating to lot type at 36 Pillsbury Road, tax map 10, lot 42, zoned agricultural residential 1, and Woodmont Commons planned unit development. Procopio Companies is the applicant, and Pillsbury Realty Development LLC is the owner.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any discussion? All right, we will go by roll call vote, starting with Ms. Champa.
Ann Champa, aye.
Lynn Wiles, aye.
Arthur Rugg, aye.
Jeff Pence, aye.
Jason Knight's aye.
Sean Faber, aye.
John Cruz, aye.
Jake Butler, aye, and the motion passes 8-0. All right. Thank you, folks.
Just a point of clarification, did that motion include road design? I thought I just heard block and lot type and not road design.
Kelly?
Yes,
Yes.
just clarify it for the record.
So to clarify, that motion does include roadway design. Yes.
Thank you.
Do we want to, is a clarification good, or would you like us to go through a motion again?
You're good. The
Clarification's
notice of decision
good?
will reflect that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would include it. You wanted to redo the motion, I was included in it.
Okay, perfect. So for meeting minutes purposes, that is to include block type, lot type, and roadway design. Thank you. All right, folks, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, I have a conceptual discussion for proposed Gateway Commerce Park at 42 Ash Street, map 10, lot 45. This is zoned Woodmont Commons PUD and Industrial 1. Pillsbury Realty Development LLC is the owner. TC Boston Development Incorporated is the applicant. Give you guys a minute to get up here. What?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just before the
Yeah.
applicant presents,
Of course.
Just to clarify one point, which we have discussed before related to this discussion, with respect to the underlying zoning versus the PUD, that question was raised probably a year ago now. My analysis, along with the town's legal counsel analysis, was the PUD.
Chris, can you just shut that? Oh, there, it's good.
The PUD does allow for the utilization of the underlying zoning and the associated permitted uses with that underlying zoning, in addition to the PUD regulations. And so you'll hear during this conceptual discussion a combination of those uses and the details of their application.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For the record, again, my name's Kevin Smith, consultant with Pillsbury Realty, owners of the Woodmont Commons project. With me this evening is the Trammell Crow team. We have a familiar face, Jim Petropoulos, who's a civil engineer on this, Tim Engelbert with Randall Paulson, Pete Hines sitting next to me with Trammell Crow, and Eli Long also with Trammell Crow in the audience this evening. Kelly, if you can go to that next slide. So just, again, a little bit of history on the PUD since we've been talking about it a lot lately. Developed 11 years ago on the market conditions at the time. We're talking about sub-area WC12 this evening. And at the time WC12 was developed in the PUD, the market has changed considerably. I would call out, number one, it allows for 350,000 square feet of office space. We all know that, especially since the COVID pandemic, office space has basically tanked, and it's still nowhere near what it was pre-COVID levels. It also allowed for 250,000 square feet of hospital use. Hospitals are no longer building hospitals. They're building satellite branches, a lot of outpatient clinics, but they're really not in the hospital business per se right now. What has also changed is industrial use is at a premium now. And there's, especially with the Boston market moving north, there's a lot of need for additional industrial space in the southern New Hampshire area. If you look at what's happened over at Pettingill Road, it's a great example of how the market has come north and really made that into a spectacular area there. The PUD, as I've mentioned in previous meetings, it did contemplate, it's a flexible document, it did contemplate using the underlying zoning that exists there. The PUD is basically an overlay into what your underlying conditions are, and in this case, the underlying zoning there is industrial use. What the PUD did not contemplate at the time is the regulations that would be followed if one decides to use that underlying zoning. And so in some areas, it says you can use compliance alternatives. And in other areas, it says where it's largely silent, the underlying zoning regulations ought to be used. And what this project does is utilizes a mix of both the underlying zoning regs as well as compliance alternatives. Lastly, I would say that we are very excited about this project because this is really bringing a first-in-class industrial commerce park to this area, not dissimilar from Pettingill Road. And what's great about a project like this is that it's very low in public services, but very high in tax revenue, and will generate tens of millions of dollars going into the future for Londonderry. The other important thing I think it's vital to point out about this project is that currently WC12 does not have utilities. There's no, other than Old Rum Trail, there are no other roadways there. There's no gas, there's no sewer, there's no water. Trammell Crow is investing anywhere between $5 to $6 million to bring utilities to this site, and it's no easy task. When we finally get into the site plan process, you'll see that some of the utilities have to go under I-93 over to the other side because that's, believe it or not, the most expedient way to get them there. Without those utilities there is no development in WC12 for probably quite some time. And so what this does is it not only allows Trammell Crow to create their program, which you'll hear about very shortly, but it also opens up the land to the north as well. There's still 86 acres to the north that still has the PUD zoning as well. That land is unsaid for right now, but certainly without utilities, nothing exists. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim Petropoulos to talk about this, the conceptual.
Thank you.
Mr.
Good
Petropoulos,
evening.
the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for having us this evening. This is actually the third time I think this particular project has appeared before the board. You may recall back in August, we came before you to discuss a zoning matter relative to the property. In November, we were here to briefly discuss some of the process of moving the project forward. But tonight, we're going to jump into the concept plan. And what I hope to try to do is describe the project. I'll make sure you're fully located as to where we are in town. I'm going to talk about some of the existing features of the property and then key elements of the site. And contrary to what Mr. Smith says, Tim Engelbert, our project architect and my good friend, will come in and weigh in on some of the architecturals, and then we'll be happy to answer questions. So, Kelly, I thank you in advance for helping me, and I'll get started. The location, if you go to the next slide, please, Kelly. Here's the aerial of the location. This is land currently owned.
I don't think it's touchscreen. We need a 10-year-old.
You just push buttons. Something happens. So this land, as Kevin mentioned, is currently owned by the Pillsbury Realty Development LLC and Hyrax Dairy Partners, both owners of Woodmont Commons. It is located just east of Interstate 93 at the exit 4A and along the dairy property line. Per your tax map, the overall perimeter of the property, if you go back one, Kelly, thanks. The overall perimeter of the property is really comprised of 8 lots, and they total about almost 200 acres, 198.7 acres. Parent zoning is industrial, and of course, in 2013, it was identified as part of the Woodmont Commons PUD, sub-area WC12. If you look at the perimeter of this site, you will see, of course, the I-93 exit 4A borders the property directly to the west, single-family homes to the north, commercial lots along the Dairy Town line to the east, and then single-family homes that reside along Ash Street, but the property to the south. Our client, Trammell Crow, has entered into an agreement to purchase the property south of Old Rump Trail. You see Old Rump Trail, which is an extension off of 4A. Right here is the property to the south that Trammell Crow is optioning, and that's what we'll talk about tonight. Next slide, please, Kelly. So our company has surveyed the property. This is a copy of the base map. It's not very glamorous, but it tells us a lot. It shows the perimeter of the property, 107 acres south of Old Rump Trail. And, of course, the property is currently undeveloped with the exception of 2 cell towers. You'll see a little star on here and here, located in the center of the property. And they gain their access and utilities from a dirt road coming from the Dairy Town line westward. Topography of the site is moderate. I liken it to a bowl which you flip upside down. There's a high hill, right, kind of in the middle, the north central part of the property. There's a hill here, and it really spills off in all directions, to the north, to the east, to the west, and to the south. And there's approximately a 100-foot grade change from the high point of the hill to the low point, which is located in the southwest corner of the property. The plan represents the wetlands, jurisdictional wetlands that have been mapped in the field by Gove Environmental Services. There's several isolated pockets of wetlands, wooded wetlands here on the property. There's also three wetland complexes over on the west side that work its way towards draining towards Interstate 93. There's also a larger complex on the east side that eventually flows southward to Ash Street. The wetlands do include a number of vernal pools, intermittent water courses, and forested wetland areas. Soils on this site, we've done about 60 explorations, both borings and test pits. The subsurface contains about 3 to 5 feet of soil overburden of rock, and that's pretty consistent with that neighborhood, especially if you go up through the highway project. You'll see the ledge that they've had to encounter as part of the roadway project. As Kevin mentioned, utilities, we have two easements over on the northeast corner of the property, Eversource easements. They have distribution lines on the property, and there's also fiber optics that service the cell tower. But water, gas, and sewer are not really close, and I'll get into in a little bit in a minute how we're going to extend those utilities to try to service this property. So to me, this map, as a site engineer, I look at it and I go, boy, you know, I've got wetlands, I've got topography, I've got pretty good geometry of the property, I've got challenging soils. You know, the goal as a site engineer is really to meet our client's development program while being, you know, responsible to addressing those challenges. Next slide, please. As we move forward with the project, we'll be making 2 applications to this board. One of them will be a subdivision of land. You can see the 7 lots south of Old Rum Trail that we'll be creating for the benefit of 4 buildings. The subdivision really will set forth property lines for these parcels, but they will also seek to dedicate the Old Rum Trail land for right-of-way. And there's also a discontinuance of Madden Road. Madden Road is that dirt road that accesses the cell towers. And oddly enough, we could find no record in town of that ever being discontinued. It does require council approval. However, it is discontinued in Derry. So kind of a unique situation there. Our second application, of course, Kelly, if you can go one more, is the site plan. And that will include a site plan for the Gateway Commerce Park, as the project will be known. 4 proposed industrial buildings totaling 751,600 square feet, along with accompanying parking, loading, and other improvements typically associated with an industrial park. So let me go through a couple key elements of this plan. It's really our client's vision to try to appeal to a variety of industrial users. And in such, those users would include R&D, light assembly, possibly manufacturing, logistics. I'm going to use the word an industrial flex space, which is that smaller tenant that might have a small office component within his rentable square feet, as well as something of light assembly and maybe a little storage in the building. So they're trying to provide a varying set of conditions for future tenants into this park. And in order to do so, we've got slight variations with each building. I'm going to walk through each of these buildings very quickly. Building number 1, up in the northwest corner, it measures 201,600 square feet. All buildings are 1 story. This will be a 32-foot clear height inside, and it's really set up for 4 tenants. 242 parking spaces in the front of the building. There's room for 48 loading docks behind the building if needed. 15 surplus trailer parking spaces. Now, this is set up really for that industrial flex tenant. Again, a multiple of uses within that tenant space. Building 2, the next building kind of in the northeast corner, 207,000 square feet, 1 story, 36 feet clear height, little taller building, and set up for 2 tenants. 212 parking spaces in the front, 37 docks in the back, 42 trailer parking. That building has an eye towards logistics and some of the buildings that you're familiar with out at the Pet and Go Road area. Building 3, kind of in the center of the property. Again, 1 story, 255,000 square feet. That's the largest building. 36-foot clear, set up for 2 tenants, but it could only be 1 tenant. 264 spaces, 48 docks, 70 trailer spaces, and that too is set up really for logistics. And then lastly, over in the southeast corner is building number 4. It's a smaller building, 1 story, 85,000, 32-foot clear, set up for 1 tenant, 110 parking spaces, smaller loading, no trailer parking. And that's really geared towards a built-to-suit. It could be a small manufacturing use or an R&D type use. Access to Gateway Commerce Park. 2 access points that have already been agreed and permitted really through DOT, and they're showed there on the green highlights. There will be a need likely for some intersection improvements there. Right now, Old Rum Trail is a divided way, I believe 2 lanes in each direction. So when we propose our curb cuts, we're going to need to break that island. We're going to have pockets and tapers and such. And currently that's under study with our project traffic engineer. The West Access Drive, the one to the west, is really that main access drive that will service, really provide access to buildings 1, 2, and 3. The East Access Drive will provide access behind Building 2 and also to a new driveway that would service Building number 4. It is the likelihood of those 2 curb cuts, the likelihood is that if signalized, it would be the western driveway. And don't forget, there's still 90 acres of land to the north that Pillsbury would retain as part of Woodmont Commons Holdings that still has development potential. Now, there's a gated emergency access that comes from the west driveway all the way down to Ash Street. It is gated on both ends. Please note, we are not proposing any open roadway connections to Ash Street. And you'll notice in the purple color.
Excuse me, can I ask you, you said on that point,
Sure.
How about the one over towards the Dairy Line? There's no access onto Ash Street, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Either one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the little, I think you're, Ian, I think you're alluding to this connection here?
Yes.
Yeah. There is a drain line connection there, but there'll be no roadway or no gated emergency connection there. There'll be no access there, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So sidewalks are shown in purple. We've tried to really provide connectivity between the buildings so they all can kind of talk and walk to each other. We do plan on making a connection across to the north if the DOT will let us, and that all falls into that particular intersection improvement for the west driveway. As a reminder, though, there are no sidewalks at all on Ash Street or Old Rum Trail. Okay, utilities we talked about briefly. Water, sewer, gas. Water and gas are located on the west side of Interstate 93, about 2,600 feet away. So they will have to be extended underground in Pillsbury Road. They dip down, is it Hovey? Is that the little, at that Hovey intersection, they dip.
Trolley car.
Yeah, trolley car, sorry. They dip down trolley car, and they end up at the west side of 93. There will be a directional bore of independently the gas and the water beneath 93 in rock to come up on the other side in that southwest corner of the property here. And then water and gas are extended about 600 feet to where our gated emergency access is, and then we head north into the property with our utilities. Sanitary sewer is located about 900 feet from Ash Street down Londonderry Road, and that will need to be extended up onto Ash Street and up and into the project. So significant extensions of utilities to service this property, but also sized enough to handle the property to the north. Real quick with regard to stormwater, 3 surface type treatment practices for buildings 2, 3, and 4. We're underground on building 1. Full design, full report, subject to DES standards and town standards, will be addressing quality and quantity of stormwater. Wetland impacts, there are wetland impacts. By using steep slopes and retaining walls, we've done our best to try to avoid and minimize them. There are 5 areas identified, about 15,000 square feet of total wetland impact. 35,000 square feet of conservation overlay impact. So we'll have a conditional use permit before you for that as well. We have met with DES officials about this. I think they were actually pleasantly surprised that we could develop a 100-acre tract and keep those impacts to a minimum. I'm getting close to concluding. Open space, yes.
Quick on this, you can go to that next plan, Kelly. Could you show us go one more, where you had a bunch of green. Could you show us where the wetland impacts will be?
I'm going to back up one if you don't mind, because I've shaded them in green. Okay. So we're nicking a vernal pool right here, right near our front entrance. There's a small isolated wetland right here that's being impacted. We hit the tip of a finger of a wetland here. It is not a vernal pool, and that's our largest impact right there. And then we have a culvert crossing right here. And there's also like a 200 square foot impact in this location right there.
Thank you.
So those are the 5 impact areas. And you see the light yellow color, that's the impact to the conservation overlay district.
Thank you.
Open space. In the industrial zone, open space is 25 feet. 25%, I'm sorry. You can see the green on our project. We are close to 60% open space for the project. About 27% or about 29 acres will remain currently wooded. Now I'm going to learn from the case that was just in front of us, how does this compare to maybe the 2013 plan? The 2013 plan speaks to shared open space and conserved green space. And it sets forth standards for WC 12 to meet that. I don't have the final numbers, Mr. Chairman, this evening, but the total aggregate of shared open space and green space is around 38 acres, and I feel confident in saying tonight we will meet that. And if you look at this plan, and see the dark green, which are trees to remain, you can see they're mostly set to the south. And to the west, towards the highway. In case you're wondering, the closest Londonderry resident to a building right here, building 4, is 450 feet, and on average, building 3 to the homes along Ash Street are about 900 feet away. I just want to conclude by saying our detailed application, before I turn it over to Tim, I'm sorry, will include subdivision plans, as I mentioned, site plans, the conditional use for the wetlands, landscape plans, lighting plans, architecturals, traffic study. Traffic will be discussed in great detail at a future public hearing. There was a scoping session recently with staff, and I think we have an idea of what they would like studied, and we look forward to preparing that report. I think the initial glimpse of traffic anticipated from this density is a little bit less than the 2013 traffic numbers for this property. And with that, I think what we'd like to do is just let Tim quickly go through some architecturals, and then we'd be happy, all of us, to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tim Engelbert, Randall Paulson Architects, Nashua, New Hampshire. After Jim's fantastic presentation, I realized why him and I are very good friends. He did a very good job at presenting many of the architectural items. But what I really kind of wanted to highlight, maybe from the architectural standpoint, is the classification and the quality of the building itself. When myself as an architect and Jim as a civil engineer having initial conversations with our developers, we talked to what classification of building are they looking to build here. And Trammell Crow in this, as you can see by this rendering, is we're looking to build Class A buildings. What is a Class A building, and why is that necessarily important? So a Class A building has along with it a Class A office space. Those tenants that are looking to move into those spaces are technology-driven users. They're well-established manufacturing companies that have been around for 50 or so years that have organically grown where they are in the New Hampshire region and are looking to move. They've outgrown where they're looking. They're looking for a facility that represents who they are and where they're looking to move towards. So they're moving out of those Class B, Class C, lower quality, for lack of a better way of saying it, building and moving into a higher class of a facility so they can really set themselves up for their prestige of who they are as a company themselves. So when we're looking at these buildings, we're looking for buildings that allow for flexibility, allow for opportunity to grow within them. We designed the building specifically for the growth within it by using knockouts, using other architectural features to allow it to grow in place. And this is looking to really allow that tenant to grow and to stay in place. So if we were to jump to the next slide as well, real quick. And then those Class A buildings are, they're designed with higher finishes, higher materials, longer lasting materials that don't weather like those Class B, Class C buildings, where an example of a Class B, Class C might be CMU block with metal paneling on it that gets dented up and dinged up. We're looking at stronger, more resilient finishes on these buildings that can weather the storms better. We also break that up, architecturally speaking, through undulations in the facade being a stepping up the roof and allowing it to go in and out a little bit. So that's one of the really big highlights I wanted to point out, is that we're looking for these Class A buildings, and with that Class A building, they're tenants that are well established in the area. They're looking to long-term grow in the community itself.
Thank you. All right. Kelly, anything?
All set.
Board? Ann?
How tall are the one-story buildings? Could you tell me?
We're looking at the clear height of the taller building to be 36 inside the building, and once we kind of zone through the final details in the later meetings, we'll know exact heights. But inside the building, a clear height of 36 feet.
36 feet, okay. I just want to say something else about Old Rum Trail. Madden Road was the beginning of the Old Rum Trail. Why can't I talk tonight? Old Rum Trail in Londonderry. Derry, it was Madden Road, but it went across the property to the south of the currently named Old Rum Trail, across it, and across where 93 is, across the property. Old Rum Trail was one of the earliest roads in town, and it took the rum and the other spirits from Boston. It went up to Merrimack River by boat to one of the ferries, brought over through Litchfield and through Londonderry and off towards eastern parts like Exeter and even farther east. But it was important to us. It was on the early maps in town, and it did not have an E on the end of it like I proposed. Old Rum Trail does not have an E on it. I know somebody had tried putting an E in there, but I explained that the use of the E is more like an English term, and the Scots-Irish would be shooting me if they knew I put an E on the word old for Old Rum Trail. So it was officially, because I know somebody tried changing it, but I talked to the state and they brought it back to the old without the E on it. So it's OLD Rum Trail. There was Scots-Irish that settled here years ago, 17 and 19. And well, put it this way, they were trying to rid themselves of any rule by the English. So
Thank you, Ann.
that's why I feel adamant about that E not being there. I
Take it off your plans,
appreciate-
would you?
I just wish one thing about this development and all of Woodmont here on that side of 93. If a distillery, a rum distillery could get put in there somewhere and have a tasting room, it would, let's find a way to put that in Woodmont Commons, hopefully over there.
I'm
Thank you,
on
Ann.
board with that.
We're a big fan of the spirits, thank you.
Yes, it'd have more meaning.
And I hate to break you the news,
Oh,
but
I'm done.
there's a big green sign right off the highway, and it's got an E at the end of Old.
What?
Mr. D, anything? I see you with your hand up.
Thank
and
you, Mr. Chair.
Can't
So,
wait.
I'm Italian. I don't know anything about E's. I have I's and O's at the end of whatever. So, whatever. But I do have a question about whatever this road is called. Who owns it?
It'll be turned over
road?
to the town. When the project is complete, the 4A project, it becomes a town road.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, it'll be up to us.
Anything else from the board?
Yeah,
Mr. Russ?
Chair, going back to the original master plan and everything, this wasn't quite envisioned, but there is, as I said, the previous, discussion that we had, that's really designed for flexibility and everything. The only thing I would ask is that, kind of take it, this is like its own separate thing anyway. So, it's just, looking at some of the designs, so to ensure there's some compatibility. I think the overall architectural looks, at least from here, looks good. We haven't got into the details yet. But you'll need to visit with the Heritage Commission. That'll make a recommendation to this board on the building design and, landscaping and so forth. That's getting more of the details. So, I think it's good. It's a positive, and the only question I do have in addition is that any idea of what type of business that you would like to have in there?
Yeah, and this is a vague answer because it's specifically designed to cast a wide net. So it's really going to range your industrial uses. We're designing each of the buildings to be subdivided, so we can put at least one wall in each of them, so it can be, as small of a tenant as 40,000 square feet or as large of a tenant as 255,000 square feet. So size range can vary. The uses themselves could be distribution. It could be more light industrial, research and development, which is more the core of the industrial demand along this stretch of 93 in southern New Hampshire. But I think that the reason we really like the project is that north of Boston and southern New Hampshire has a very diverse tenant base, a very, very strong credit that, it's anything from Walmart to Thermo Fisher. I think those are our two bookends that we are looking to capture, if that helps you. But it
Yes.
is really meant to be a wide net.
Yep, good, thank you.
And Art, to your point, in those areas where there's either compliance alternatives or if the PUD is silent and we intend to use the underlining regulations, those are items that we intend to work through the site plan approval process, getting town staff on board with it, getting their recommendations, and then obviously bringing it to the planning board and getting the planning board's approval too.
Thank you. Jason?
I know there's no approval that's required tonight or anything like that, but I'm just going to follow up with what I've said the last couple times stuff has come in front of us. I'm struggling to support this because I feel like everything that is coming in front of us for Woodmont Commons is hacking away at the stuff that people supported and liked in those master plan charrettes in favor of quick, fairly easy development and profit. And the stuff that people liked is going away, is being made irrelevant. And I really don't like it. I know that this is a variety of uses, but I feel like I'm looking at 4 warehouses. And I can tell you that one thing I hear over and over again is that people are sick of warehouses. And that was not what it was envisioned here. I realize the market has changed, but the market's changed because it's taken us 11 years to get to this point. And I don't know. I just don't like the direction that I'm seeing out of the stuff coming in from Woodmont, because all of the things that people, and I've been in this town 20 years, all of the things that people said in 2013 that they were excited about seems to be the first thing to go away in every one of these proposals. And I'm seeing it here as well. And I'm not a fan. So again, I know there's nothing to vote on tonight, but I just want to let you guys know, because there's going to be more and more stuff coming. I do not like the direction that I'm seeing on what's coming through. So,
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Go ahead. You sounded like you were going to talk. You good?
No, I'm just
Okay. So I think we need to put a consensus together as a board as to how we feel about what has been presented in front of us tonight, being a compliance alternative, and if the board is comfortable with what is being presented being brought to the next level of site plan. Mr. D.
So I do have one, what is the underlying zoning here?
Industrial 1.
Okay, so
Which is
without,
essentially what this is.
Correct. This is an approved,
So
this is a permitted use within the industrial
Correct.
zoning district.
so without a PUD,
this is what's going.
this would be warehouses.
Correct.
With a PUD,
It could
this is
still be
warehouses.
Yes.
I don't know what to say.
So, from a consensus standpoint, how does the board feel on the client utilizing the underlying zoning here?
I like it.
Yep, I would support it.
I do not.
Ann?
Personally, I don't support it, but functionally here,
Thank you.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
yeah.
No, but yes.
I'm
Uneasy,
thinking for
yes.
myself, but then when I was thinking as a board member.
Yes. So I feel like you have a bit of an idea how the board feels. Seems as though the consensus would support what is being presented here. We do have a little bit of an architectural rendering, so I want to talk on it. Again, this is probably a bit premature, but at least you have something going into, into your site plan. I think softening up the colors a little bit would help out. The blue is blue, so maybe softening some colors up and to kind of compatibility and design with the rest of the development. I don't want to call them storefronts, but storefronts for a lack of a better term. If we could bring those to life a little bit by, adding some sort of,
Maybe
some
warmth.
sort of, veneer or warmth to, part the first 3 feet or something like that to accent the building a little bit and really show you where these storefronts are. And storefront's the wrong word, but you know what I'm talking about.
Entrances.
Yes, entrances, thank you.
Yeah, good thing to break it up.
Correct. Something to break up the size of the building a little bit, give you a little bit of warmth where your entrances are, and really distinguish what your entrance is. All right.
On that note,
It's the,
Yes,
it's the earth tones that,
It's not tall enough for a belly band, so if you want a belly band,
well, actually, it is. By the time they're done, if it's 36 clear space, it's going to be 40 feet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
on the outside.
still one story.
So, what the chair is saying is architectural interest,
Yes.
architecturally pleasing to the eye. You can take a Class C building, if you want to tour around, if you go on exit 4 in Londonderry, going north, right as you come onto the highway, there's 3 buildings that were a train wreck, that were bought by a local person that lives in town and has lived in town for a long time, and with some, it was very short money, between color and architectural design, made that place look like a jewel. All cleaned up. You drive by it going north or south, you say, wow, those are good looking buildings. All it is a block of brick building. But because the paint scheme, so that's what the chair is talking about. You're gonna have backs that are fronts, right? It's like a lakefront property. You have 2 fronts basically, waterfront and a street front, so both have to look good. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Anything else from the board? All right. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand, Kelly. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank
Anything
you,
for us?
and,
Before I guess I kind of dismissed you. Did you guys have anything else? You good?
Any questions of us?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, happy holidays. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Kelly, thank you for your help.
Where'd the agenda go?
Oh,
Our agenda
Right here.
item, we are on to other business. We have a Heritage Commission discussion follow-up. Our members of the commission that are here, you're more than welcome to come up to the mics so we can have some conversation. We'll give them a second to get out of here. Mr. Rugg.
Mr. Chair, what I'll do is I'll read from the minutes of where we left this, and this is the minutes from the meeting of November 13th, 2024. After an extended discussion, the board agreed on the need to define the scope of the commission's responsibilities. Board and commission members will bring a list of these criteria to the next board meeting for discussion. Period.
Thank you. All right, Kelly, do you have anything you would like to start this off with?
I believe Mr. D has something to start with, and I will chime in should he request it.
Mr. D, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So the board, at that point, did task me with doing a little bit of work behind the scenes. And then I tasked the board back and said, you too. So I thank you all for putting countless hours into this thing and doing your due diligence and reading, and I know that you all will have some comments. So we started with Mr. Malaguti's October 5th memorandum, which was a really good thumbnail sketch of the past and the present. And there were several things in his memorandum that are problematic for us and for the Heritage Commission. What I did was I yielded to, and I gave you all a copy of Mr. Malaguti's letter. I think it should have been on your desk. What I did was I thought the easiest way to do it would be to start with the present and work backwards. And so I took the rules of procedure from the town website. It's titled Heritage/Historic Commission, Town of Londonderry, New Hampshire Rules of Procedure. That document was signed 28th of March 2019. As it turns out, the state of New Hampshire made a bunch of changes in 2022. That is your New Hampshire Planning and Land Use Regulation Board Book, of which mostly we're talking about RSA 673 and 674-ish, give or take. Aside from that, I looked through a bunch of towns, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 towns, kind of in this region a little bit, looking through heritage commissions in towns to see what other people were doing. Okay, typically in Londonderry in the 47, it'll be 47 years in a few months here that I've been in town, Londonderry doesn't care what other people do, but I thought it'd be interesting just for perspective to understand what other towns are doing in regard to their Heritage Commission when it comes to their responsibilities or not. And I will tell you in my research, and I know I probably missed some, but I could not find any Heritage Commission boards that had responsibilities like the Londonderry Board has. In other words, they don't review anything when it comes to planning, land use. All they do is historic stuff. It was not easy to find, it was not easy to navigate, because what I had to do is I had to go to the minutes of the meetings of those towns that I was researching and read the minutes to see what it was they were talking about.
Sounds like a super fun month.
It was, I can't tell you how enjoyable it was.
They're all different.
To hear what the other towns were doing. And they are all different, but they were all rather similar. And I think, I came to a little bit of a realization of what the problem is that we have a single board with a dual mission. They are a heritage committee and they are a historic commission. When you read through the RSAs, it's very clear that historic commissions are an autonomous board that has nothing really to do, they can make decisions on their own as a historic commission. A heritage committee doesn't have that. A heritage committee answers to the planning board, however you want to say it, works for the planning board, gets their marching orders from the planning board, reports to the planning board their findings, and if you read the verbiage, again, go into the RSAs, Sylvia taught me that, and my hand still hurts from her slapping me for not following RSAs. They advise the planning board. So, I think what needs to happen is this rules of procedure needs to be separated out into two separate documents.
Question for you.
Two separate sets of marching
You want me to
orders.
wait? You want me to wait? You want to keep going?
It's up to you.
Would that entail two separate committees?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, by statute, they can be combined.
Yep, not at all. Nope. Same people, same meeting, same time of day, same whatever. And I think that would unravel some of the problems with this document, because this document is in conflict with itself, with the RSAs, and with the town regulations. So, if we could separate the Historic Commission out and just have Heritage Committee, computer keeps turning off, sorry, save it, damn it. That would solve a lot of problems, because it's a mishmash of things. The other thing I didn't understand was, and I did have a conversation with Kelly about it, I don't understand how, it says a Heritage Commission adoption, but there's no town official that signed it, other than Chris's signature and the secretary, David's signature on here. And I don't understand how it wouldn't be documented by the chair of the planning board, who...
Is ultimately tasking them with what their mission is.
Correct. So, at any rate, I think this needs to be rewritten, reconfigured, whatever. Now, in the meantime, how come my password not be right? Did I get voted off the board again? No, okay, I'm in. So, one of the easier things, if you'll notice in your board notes, aside from Arthur's notes, shall we put one in there?
Comment sheet?
Yeah, you're talking about the sheet, right?
Sheet, the comment sheet,
Oh,
there it is, Heritage
okay.
DRC sheet, it says. So, Kelly, is this one that exists right now?
Correct.
This is-
So,
Yep.
so these, just to back up a little bit,
Yep,
through our design review process, we have our design review committee. The Heritage Commission is on that list of committee members. That's in our site plan and subdivision regulations. This is a comment sheet that is sent to the Heritage Commission through that process now. This comment sheet is sent when my department receives a new design review application. So this is the current sheet that they receive. This is what they look at when they're reviewing with an applicant a new design review application.
so, to that point, there's a lot to unpack here. Okay, my takeaway is there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of figuring on what this board wants from the Heritage Commission. What service does the planning board want the Heritage Commission to provide to the planning board? How much or how little? And where is it that you want to draw lines? Okay, I have some definite opinions, but I would like to hear from board members what you think is needed or necessary. Part of what we're seeing, and Mike's memorandum does a good job of that, of detailing the mission creep of, they used to just talk about lilacs. Now, all of a sudden, they're talking about bus stops and parking spots, for whatever reason. So whatever, how far back do we want to roll it or not? Or do we want to just leave it the way it is? That's up to this board to make that decision on where you want to go. And Mr. Chair, if you want to hear where I think it should go now, I'll do that. Or if you want to hear
I'm
from the
gonna
other board
essentially
members.
ask everybody, so.
If you want to hear from the
Yep.
other board members first, and then I can do that later, or it's up to
We
you.
can, let's start with you since we're going, and then
Can I
we'll.
just make a suggestion before we get into some heavy discussion? So what I had suggested, I think I said this the last time we discussed it, was essentially that this board should, and Tony has been saying this board should come up with a set of criteria.
Mhm.
Limited criteria, we're not talking, I think this is a little bit excessive in terms of the amount of information that we're expecting the Heritage Commission to look at.
You talking about the checklist?
Correct, with respect to this particular comment sheet.
Okay.
It would be helpful to me as staff if this board could come up with a list similar to this that is very clear about what you're expecting from the Heritage Commission. We can adjust this sheet and send it to the commission and have a very clear, defined process.
So
Mr. D?
I'd be glad to start with that. So, to be honest with you, I think there's only 2 items on here that I would consider that the Heritage Commission should have a purview over. But understand, I said this in the previous meeting. I think there's more of a process issue than there is a topics issue, for lack of a better term. This has 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 topics on it, okay? That's part of the problem, for sure. But I think there's a bigger issue with the process that the applicant has to go through to get to here. that's unnecessary. That's how this whole thing started. So, and I said this at the last meeting, I can't get over, and I will never get over unless the process changes, the fact that the Heritage Commission in their meetings are advising the applicants, not advising the planning board. Now, how you break that chain, and from a process standpoint, how do you get to that and figure that out and make it work? I wish I had the answer. I'm not smart enough for that.
That's a bad thing, because usually you're the smartest guy
But
in
what,
the room.
I don't think so. But what I do know is, in my opinion, one person's opinion, that process is broken and it's cumbersome, because there are some times when an applicant has to come back to the Heritage Commission more than once. And I think that's not right. I don't think they should. And I also think that the fact that, to be clear, they're an advisory board, right? Clearly stated in the RSAs, but yet they're not advising applicants to change a color. They're telling them, we want the color changed. We don't like green, we don't like pink, we want blue. And the applicants are making that change. When it gets to us, we say, what happened to, where'd pink go? Well, Heritage Commission told us that they didn't like that color. Well, we're the decision makers. The planning board is the decision makers.
Could I chime in just to that point? The process point that you're making, the back and forth between the Heritage Commission and an applicant, it really shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't be returning, because the question should be being posed to this board. The Heritage Commission makes an advisory comment. The applicant takes it. Either they say yes and they do it, or maybe they say, I don't know, let me go ask the planning board. And then that final decision is made. It really shouldn't be, the back and forth should be at this board. It shouldn't be between any advisory commission, because this board has the final say.
But in the real world, isn't that change always going to get made?
Not
Just to
necessarily.
be-
I mean, you've seen with some
we've
recent
had it.
applications
Where they've
that
said
the
no.
applicant has waited until they got to this board.
Yeah.
And you've seen in recent staff memos that there is a question posed to this board about what you want to do with certain comments from both advisory boards that we have.
Right, so I come back to the way that the Conscom does it. The applicant makes a presentation. The Conscom sends us notes, and here we are. So anyway, going back to this checklist, street naming, development name is a 911 fire department thing. I don't know why.
It's all separate now, so it's no longer needed.
Yep. Okay, so we don't need that.
What did you say? I'm trying to figure out where you are. They're still on the checkbox. Okay.
I don't think Ann heard what you said.
Oh, Ann, as far as the street naming, that's all done through the fire department and the 911 state system. And that's to keep the naming so that it's very clear when the fire departments and our police communicate, they don't make a mistake.
Okay. I remember Marilyn Ham naming a few streets like Dragonfly Way and all that, so that
was before the
fire
911 system took
Okay.
effect. But once the state adopted or enhanced 911, the state controls everything. I'm sorry.
So street naming, I guess, should come off.
That's the way it
Off the
used
list,
to
'cause
be.
That's not, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be,
Used
but
to be,
now
yeah.
Lighting
change.
is codified. We have all the codes for the lighting. They have to be dark sky
Correct.
approved or
These
whatever.
site plan regulations speak to lighting.
I think the only question there would be the design of the light itself.
You're talking about the shape of the
Yes.
The
So
aesthetics.
you usually have a variety of lighting, and the question is, what do you like? And that comes from the developer.
So,
So it would be more of the fixture design.
how is,
Mr. D?
I don't, I don't know. How is that heritage? What does that have to do? What is,
So I think there's,
I don't get it. I just don't.
there's a few different things here. And there really is a lot here.
Yeah, you're gonna need your
Continue.
referee shirt tonight.
What?
You're gonna need your referee shirt tonight.
Don't worry. Continue what you're saying, and then I'd like to get to Jeff.
Yeah, so historic buildings and structures, obviously. Stone walls, for sure, but understand that the RSAs talk about stone walls on public ways, which I found very interesting because I never knew that. And I think our
Site plan regulations.
site plan regulation talks about it also.
And our, site plan and subdivision regulations call out stone walls in specific criteria and design, actually, for stone
Right.
walls.
So other historic resources, of course. Again, signage is pretty codified, but whatever. Other issues explained below, for sure. I don't know, I need to hear some other people, because my brain is all jumbled.
Jeff.
I'm struggling to kind of determine whether or not some of the issues that Mr. D brought up is the rule, or if they are exceptions to the rule and kind of items that have just, for whatever reason, were overlooked. Say, for example, kind of an applicant going to the Heritage Commission multiple times. I would imagine that probably doesn't happen often.
Mr. Heritage Chair.
It
Can you
depends.
answer that?
It depends. So, in cases where they just haven't submitted sufficient materials, yes, we will ask them to come back. If they come in with no rendering, and we can't see anything about what the structure is going to look like, we'll ask them to come back. If they come with no materials, no color palettes, again, no real idea of what it's really going to look like. So we have done that before. If they come in with a full design and there's just something we want changed, what we'll try to do usually to stop them from having to come back is they can drop off color samples or anything with the planning department. We can review them outside of the meeting, and just say, yes, that's fine, everything looks good. And in the DRC sheet, we can note that we've said, colors to be submitted at a later date or something like that. So we try to make accommodations where we can so that they don't have to come back. But from time to time, yes, we do have them come back with more material if they need to.
And yeah, and all that's obviously the applicant has that information that they need to bring it. So, walk me through, and I apologize. I'm trying to get the process. I'm trying to understand what the big problem is here. I totally get the RSAs. I respect what Mr. D has presented and the work that he's put into here. Trying to understand what the risk to the town is on how we're operating right now. I'm trying just to kind of get a really good kind of picture of what the problem we're trying to solve is. Could you walk me through briefly? I don't want to take this into 3 hours. What the typical life cycle of the applicant in front of the Heritage Commission?
Sure. Much like the planning board, they will submit their site plan, hopefully with all necessary materials, lighting plan, signage plan, landscaping, all that stuff, so that we can look at everything. We look over the plans, determine first if there are any historic buildings or structures, stone walls, things like that. There typically aren't. For the most part, we have a list of properties in town that have historic resources that we need to manage. Otherwise, every once in a while, one will come up in a design plan where somebody's looking to do something and we realize there's a cellar hole or something on the property. But for the most part, it's all development that's being done on virgin land. In those cases, we stick to the rest of the items that you see in front of you. Site design, landscaping, architectural design, whether or not they have a full lighting plan, what kind of lighting fixtures they have, mostly design elements. Although from time to time, we will also advise on things that we know the planning board is going to come up with, like if they have way too much signage and we know that you're going to have a problem with that, we may let them know about that ahead of time. Like, hey, just so you know, you've got a lot of signage on the property. This is probably going to come up. You should probably take a look at it. But then other than that, we review colors, architecture, landscaping, and give input. Basically, all geared towards one of our stated objectives, which is to guide development to keep with the character of the town.
No, that's definitely helpful. I think I'd like to kind of.
I didn't realize how loud that was till it just turned off.
I would definitely like to hear it from kind of other members of the board, and that's helpful. I wasn't probably aware of kind of the back and forth. I think that definitely is a process thing that we want to probably try to through this process, through this discussion, through this collaboration, work to streamline and rectify. I do think looking at this list here with we could definitely identify areas to scope down to ensure that the stated mission of the Heritage and Historic Commission is providing the best value for the town. So I think we can probably get there. For me, I appreciate the work that the Heritage Commission does. It does allow, I appreciate the opportunity for the town members to see these new developments in a very kind of visual way. So I do appreciate that. But I do, I think I'd like to very much understand and reduce any risk that we have that may exist as much as possible. So that's kind of definitely where I'm coming from.
Thank you. I want to chime in here a little bit. I think there's a bigger problem here than what is honestly being discussed tonight. A lot of it goes back to process. Mr. D, I agree with you to the fact that the Heritage Commission or the Historical Commission, whichever hat they are wearing, I do believe that they are outside of what and I mean, you've told us they're outside of what the scope is for the given scope through RSAs. They are outside of that. I totally agree with that. But the caveat to that is I feel as though they are providing a necessary service to the town or to the process. I think the deep what planning board.
planning.
Yeah, the planning board. I think the deeper issue here, which we've heard many times, is our design review process as a whole. This is one piece of the design review process. I really think there's a bigger conversation here of what our design review process looks like in the future. Not a conversation tonight, but I think there is way more here than what we're talking about with the Heritage Committee. And I don't think we can fix any of that until we talk about what the root issue is, which is our design review process is flawed. And until then, I don't see. I do agree there's some stuff we can clean up here, but I don't see how much we can do because we need to go back to the design review process as a whole, and it is flawed. I do think there's ways to clean up, for lack of a better terms, how the committee is currently operating. And I think the quicker solution to a little tiny part of a much bigger issue here is that almost formalize this a little bit more, that the applicant has a clear understanding and expectation of exactly what is going to be expected of them at a Heritage Commission meeting. That the applicant comes up, presents what they have to present, presents what they would like their property to look like, everything. And that is the end of the conversation with the applicant, and it starts a deliberation with the committee. And from there, the committee is creating for the planning board a breakdown of their summary of the project that was at hand. So it takes out a little bit of this, I don't want to, bargaining is the wrong word, but back and forth between the committee and the architect. I think it can clean that up a little bit. Everything, and I mean honestly, even inside of this, lighting can fall under architectural design. Signage can fall under architectural design, the way I look at it. I agree. The lighting ordinance is really codified. To Art's point, you guys are talking about the aesthetic, the architectural aspect of the lighting. You are not talking about the location of the lighting, because that is all codified. They have a code that they need to meet. But I really think there is a much larger picture here that needs to be addressed, and I've said it time and time again, is that our design review process needs a serious looking at and a real way to update that process to make sure that it is as effective as it can be for applicants, staff, and everybody. I think if that process were to be updated and we had more of a technical review committee or something that is more formal than this design review committee, I think a lot of these would be addressed at, then the scope of the Heritage Committee would go to what it is by RSA. Until any of that happens, I don't see how we can greatly reduce the scope of what the Heritage Committee is doing. But I do think that we can clean it up a little bit.
So I agree with you 100%, Mr. Chair, and to be clear, I am a fan of the Heritage Committee. I know it doesn't seem like it.
No, I know you are.
But my problem is, and to answer Jeff's question, what is the risk to the town? The risk to the town is the things that the Heritage Committee is doing is not listed anywhere in our regulations. That's a problem.
Correct.
And their rules of procedure is not, other than it's posted on their website. If we sent this to legal, I'm very convinced it would come back so redlined it would be a do-over. That's one opinion. I'm not an attorney by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not an expert on municipal law, but I am well-read. And I think this is a mess. I really do. I think there's risk here. I think we've been lucky. And so, here we are.
I think with that, how do I want to word this? Because there's a third part of this Heritage Committee, right? We've talked about there is a historical committee, and then there is a Heritage Commission
Yep.
and a Heritage Committee.
Two separate things.
Correct. There's also kind of a third part of this, is they are part of the design review committee.
100%.
There's a committee inside of a committee, which again goes back to, I think we have a bigger issue here that is flawed.
There's one other part to the exposure. It's that no other town operates in this fashion.
Yeah.
That's easy pickings for
Yeah.
legal
I can't-
action means.
Clarification, I can't say no other
But
town.
that we've found, yeah.
Quite of all the ones that I looked at, I couldn't find it, and finally I said, this is a futile exercise. I'm not gonna look at all 214 towns. I'm sure there's one.
Yeah.
Or,
So
or several.
the
but-
instances where you have a commission acting in this way is when you have a specific historic district commission that is utilizing essentially an overlay district that is a historic district overlay, such as Portsmouth. And they have regulations associated with that particular area.
Correct.
That's when you see this type of review occurring.
And they talk about what kind of light fixture it has to be on A Street, because all of A Street has that same light fixture, that's what it looks like.
It has to be in the historic district, which is defined and passed by the legislative body.
Correct. So, you know, there's a bunch going on here, we got a bunch of issues. We
Can
got-
I make a suggestion?
But yes, please, bail us out.
If the board wants to take some kind of action, okay, we obviously can't address the design review
No,
process
yeah,
right
no,
now,
yeah,
which means we can't really address order of operations
correct,
easily.
correct.
I think we can address the scope concern, the mission creep concern, to some degree, simply by using this sheet that's in front of you and having this board give some direction on the handful of items you want or don't want on there. That's just step one. Or you do nothing and we try and tackle this as a larger project.
I'd like to hear from the rest of the board. If people, and you don't have to say anything, but if you want to.
He's raising his hand again, so let's start with that. I don't want his hand to get tired, John, you know?
It's good exercise, keeps the rotator cuffs alive. I think also the rules of procedure need to be updated to reflect what is current. I mean, they're basically 6 years old, and times change. And we just recently updated our rules of procedure because they were dated and could be problematic for us also.
Right,
so.
but there's a problem there as well, because this rules and procedure started over there. And I don't think it ever came here. I don't think they
I
ever
don't think
did.
it needs to come here, because they're their own.
Yeah,
They're their own entity.
They're
So they
on
can
some-
have
For
rules.
Historic Commission, but not for Heritage Committee. That's where
They're
the
both
conflict is in
considered
the
land use
RSAs.
boards.
Sorry?
They're both considered land use boards that, per the RSAs that you stated, write in their own and vote in their own bylaws.
I think it's, the question is, what should or shouldn't the bylaws contain?
So let me, if it's okay, to continue on that. So 674, 44B, letter C, says, assist the planning board as requested in the development and review of sections, I mean, you can go on and on and on.
This is Heritage
That's Heritage
Commission.
Com...
That is not historic.
It is not
whatever.
historic. Heritage Commission, it's
Yeah.
called. 674-44, Heritage Commission. So,
Well,
So we need to give them a clear outline of what our expectation
and
is.
that's
of
what
the
Kelly's trying to help
Yeah.
us do, I
Yep.
think.
Yes,
Trying-
yes.
trying.
He's trying-
I'm
that's what
trying
she's
to
help us
just
do.
narrow this a
We
little bit.
need to give
because-
them direction on what we need for help. Does this board think we need help?
Yes.
I think we do.
Yep.
I personally think we do. So B, let's give them direction. Right now, they're flapping in the breeze because there's never been a conversation like this that I can remember.
This is a first anyway, to help define it better. But I think also is the input from design review on what their expectations are of Heritage Commission input, which would come from this board and the Heritage Commission also.
Well, I think if we stick to what I've been kind of saying this
Yeah.
whole time in this sheet and narrowing it, I can easily, typically applicants have a conversation with staff prior to submitting. I can easily share this sheet with them and say, here's what you should expect at the Heritage Commission. We do that already with our current process. But again, to the point we're discussing tonight, it's not abundantly clear what the planning board is expecting from the Heritage Commission.
Absolutely.
So I think if we clarify that, we can.
I'm just trying to take a swag at this and we can discuss it just to have a starting place. But it seems to me we could look at those top three. If it doesn't hit those, the conversation goes into an advisory conversation after that, because those are clearly within the purview. After that, they can still discuss the same things they're discussing today, but it's clearly in an advisory aspect. The other thing I wanted to add is, do we give them a completeness checklist of things they need to bring to the Heritage Commission? Because the things that he outlined there were clearly, like, if you don't have drawings of what it's going to look like, that's a clear miss.
So we don't have a formal list, but the expectation that staff relays is you need your architectural renderings, and we reference the lookbook, and make sure you look at that beforehand.
Okay, so that they're informed. Okay,
but that's to that point. That's why I'm saying this sheet is a good starting point for some type of checklist, because if it comes from this board, it's very easy to implement.
And does this go to the applicant?
This goes to the design review committee, but I have no problem sharing it with the applicant.
Because if we do share it with the applicant, we could put that right on here, just in case, as a double check to go, hey, you need these materials to go in front.
The only caveat I'm going to throw in is this isn't a regulatory document, so
True.
I can say it and I'll enforce it, and I don't anticipate pushback. I think it would actually be well received, but just to be clear, this isn't a regulatory document.
Jason.
Looking at this, I almost think that it would make sense to break this checklist out into two sections.
Historic, and heritage.
Exactly. So these first three, we are go, no go, we decide what happens, right? You have to listen to us. Historic buildings, stone walls, other historic resources. We are the be all and end all on it.
They are saying that.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. Yes. These other pieces, we are advising you on, right? We can provide an advisory basis on this. But your recommendations come to us instead of them, right? But they're going to be smart people, and if you're talking to them and going, the lighting, there may be issues with the lighting or something like that, then they're going to come to us already having a plan in place to discuss that, right? But they understand that those other pieces are strictly advisement, right? You are just offering them guidance and help for when they come here, right? Those first three pieces, you decide. The other ones, here's what you may want to consider when you go to the planning board. This color, you may want to look at, you might want to have a backup color when you go in or something like that.
And the reason for that is to stop a potential problem of somebody not understanding that this is let's stick with color, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
This is the decision-making body on color. The problem is Heritage says, you got a pink building. We're advising you not to do that. We like the earth tones, okay? They come here, they've changed their plans. We see it and say, earth tones? We're all about pink. What are you doing? The applicant says, but Heritage said, and we say, well, they're advisory. Now you get a pissed off applicant.
Mm-hmm.
So
who's spent money changing it from?
I think now
Not necessarily, but because that's an extreme
to add to this though.
Definitely.
To add to this, Kelly, we can't tell somebody what color to make their building. The whole thing's a disaster. Again, it goes back to we cannot tell somebody you need to make your building this color.
You can't regulate color.
Correct.
You can advise that we like certain tones, that we would certainly like it better if the building had earth tone hue versus magenta.
Correct. But if the applicant comes back and says, well, we're putting a magenta building up, we cannot say no to that.
Well, if
But do you see where
they're insistent on
the
it.
conflict could happen, and actually it has happened? That's not an example I made up, where the applicant left mad because you all said one thing, we said whatever, they said, well, blah, 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 and now they're confused. And that's where it has nothing to do with you, and has with your board, and has everything to do with process. And that's where the chair is saying.
Big old P word.
We gotta fix process.
Just to get
To
back to
Kelly's point,
what I keep
there's
saying.
8 things here.
Yeah.
Which 2 do you wanna take out?
Kelly, don't worry. We're getting to it, Kelly.
I think Kelly's working
Seriously,
on it.
to the point about color, so you're talking about architectural design. Architectural design, big bucket, narrow it,
Yeah.
get a specific question,
So
specific item.
before I start making some of my recommendations, Lynn gave me one of these about 10 minutes ago. Lynn,
No, just my general comment is I'm still not sure what problem we're trying to solve with this whole discussion. Right. But with that said, I think there are some design review process issues that we need to talk about. And it's not just with the Heritage Commission, it's with the Conservation Commission, because everything we're talking about here applies to that commission as well. But is it, in terms of documentation, is it a matter of the planning board writing a letter of delegation to the Heritage Commission, writing it into our rules of procedure, and that they could write it into their rules of procedure as well?
Correct.
And that way, we have roles and responsibilities clearly delineated as to who's doing what and when it's expected.
would this essentially become a regulation? Would we have to Tony's point, there is no regulation, would we have to regulate what the Heritage Commission, Historic Commission's purview is? Because there is no regulation right now.
So there is regulation on what their purview is through the RSAs.
Our regulations.
And there is regulation on what their purview is through our regulation. They
And
have very specific
Yes,
criteria.
and what I'm saying is, do we have to update those to reflect the
If
things
you
that?
want it to be more,
Yes.
you may want to,
That's what
depending
I'm-
on what
that's what I'm getting
degree
at.
we're talking about.
Yes.
It may need to be a regulation.
Yes.
And
So,
it eliminates the gray areas as much
Correct.
as possible.
so,
One of
But
the
just
other
to be-
issues that we talked about was are we interested in having Heritage Commission do industrial sites? Not I'm not saying
Correct.
commercial, I'm saying industrial sites, we can't talk about an industrial site. Why?
correct.
Do we need purple lilacs in an industrial site?
So just
I'm
to clarify
just throwing
something,
that out.
so we have regulation on lighting, right? Let's just stick with lighting. When you talk to the Heritage Commission about what you want them to comment on with respect to lighting, if you're going to differ from what the regulation says, again, depending on if you want specific fixtures to be on these architectural designs, then, and that's a consistent, request from this board, then yeah, maybe it needs to be regulation. Or if you're just looking for a broad brush, Heritage provide us your advisory comment for lighting fixtures in certain instances, that doesn't necessarily have to be a regulation, because that's still just an advisory comment. So that's why I say, to what degree are you talking about? But now what we're really talking about is what a historic district commission overlay area would be. Color, specific fixtures, things of that nature.
Which they
Is
can
there-
do color.
Yeah.
They can do
In that,
color.
if you were to have.
If you were in a
specific
historic
area.
district.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
If you broad
defined
brush that
district.
across the whole town,
Yeah, I can't do
that's not a good idea.
No.
Is there a specific trigger of what goes in front of you guys and what doesn't?
All
Or is it
design
what
review
you recommend?
applications.
I'm sorry?
All design review applications currently.
So if somebody's coming and they have a single lot, a 20-acre lot, and they want to subdivide it into 10 lots, that comes to you with zero site plan.
The only time we look at stuff like that is we do see subdivisions. They do come before us. There's no site plan. Specifically, when we look at those, we look for rock walls, and if there's any cellar holes or anything like that on the property, any historic, cultural significance. Outside of that, we just say, yeah, it looks great.
See, I don't see
There's not
why,
much we can
and
do with it.
why does
Well,
an applicant have to waste
hold
their
on, get it.
time? That could be done, without an applicant having to take their engineers and whatever to a Heritage Commission meeting for however many hours it is, depending on if they're first, second, third, or fourth. That doesn't make any sense to me.
That's what I was asking.
I
Well,
would not be happy.
If I can get to the reason why I asked that question is a question of uniformity, right? Like, so does every design go in front of you, which evidently it does. But also, if we're talking about something like lighting, right? One design, it may be that we request that each lighting fixture is X and it costs $40, let's say, right? And then the next design, the request could be that the lighting fixture that we want costs $100, right? And is that something that a developer can come back and say, well, why do I have to pay more for a lighting fixture for X development than the person last month had to pay, twice as much than the person last month had to pay, right? Like, is there...
Well, there's concern about if this board is going to attempt to enforce that, the response from an applicant potentially would be, well, why do I have to do this? Show me where it's written down. And the answer is it's not written anywhere. So that's why when it comes to this board, you have to be within your regulatory documents and be reasonable.
So, is it fair to say commercial site plans should be going to the Heritage Commission? Commercial
Yes.
site plan, the Chase Bank, the Vista Medical, the
Yes.
Yes.
Noria gas station, commercial site plans. Do we all agree commercial site plans should be going to the Heritage Commission?
Yes, because if it didn't go before the Heritage Commission, that Derry Medical Center would have red frame around the large windows on the sides, the front corners of the building.
Okay, but that's
Because
an
it had to
opinion.
come here also, that's the point.
But that's also an
If it
opinion.
came
People might
here,
like that.
And you saw, because you're on this board, and you saw the red things around there, then it wouldn't have got approved, because you didn't like the red.
All right.
I'm glad they stopped it
Back to-
before it got
please,
here.
back-
Let's get back to business here.
Back to what I was saying.
That supposes that this board doesn't know
I
anything.
don't like using this thing. Mr. D, if I have to use this, it's getting chucked at your head.
I understand. Won't be the first time.
So we can all agree commercial site plans should be going to the Heritage Commission.
Yes.
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 Subdivisions, residential subdivisions, should they be going to the Heritage Commission?
No.
I've got
Either,
a no.
No.
I've got a no.
I think either staff screens them for like cellar holes. I know, I think a year or so ago, there was a subdivision up off of High Range Road.
That's not
with
the
two
Heritage
cellar
Commission,
holes.
that's the Historic District, whatever you want to call it.
No, it's not the historic district. It's identifying what's there historically.
Correct.
So it comes under historic building structures.
But
Correct.
design,
Somebody has
no.
to.
The market decides what the houses look like.
Correct. This is what I'm saying. On a residential subdivision,
Residential subdivision, the design of the house is up to the owner, the developer, or
Correct.
whatever.
So-
It's only the stone walls or any historical artifacts.
so a residential subdivision that does not have any historical significance, is that going to the Heritage Commission, yes or no? No.
I got a question.
Ann?
Morrison House on Hardy Road. Did you look into that as far as the history of that house?
She's talking about the 7-lot, you're probably thinking of the Red Morrison house.
Yeah,
She's
right.
talking about the 7-lot subdivision on Hovey
Yeah.
Road.
You saw that subdivision.
We saw that, yeah.
They did as
Okay,
well.
yeah. Was there any historical significance
I don't
there?
know if that.
So there's a perfect
I don't know
example
what the
of,
commission did
The
with
stone
Yeah,
walls.
see,
There's-
nobody looked into it.
The,
I'm not sure what
Yeah,
the
the only-
commission's response was with respect to that building. I don't recall.
The only thing, I don't remember specifically the plan that she's talking about, but the only thing that we would have identified on that would have been stone walls that we asked to be reused on property.
correct.
How
But
about the house?
there's no say in the house. What say do they have in the design of a guy who wants to build a house to sell it?
She's talking about the
A house that was
historic-
existing.
Oh, the
Existing
existing house. It
house.
wasn't historic. It was old, not historic.
How do you know?
Is it on a historical register?
It should have been.
Do we have any houses in Londonderry on a historical register?
I'm not talking about the state register. I'm talking about the map from 2006, I think it was, Art, or 2000.
What's that map?
2008, that showed the houses in Londonderry.
It's on
Potential.
the,
Older
it's
than
on the list
100.
of historical properties.
yeah.
Yeah,
What list of historical properties?
The town's list of historic properties.
Yeah.
We had a
Of interest.
commission in 2006.
Properties
that
of
developed a
interest.
lot.
It is not an official,
No, it's a list of old property, certain architectural design, and any historic value was put on the list. This was done by actually a task force that was put together by the town council at that time, and it developed the list, which the Heritage Commission really worked on the list between staff and the Heritage Commission. They took pictures, and we sat there for probably a good part of a year, looking through all the pictures and what was significant, got put in the book. The owners of those properties were asked if they wanted to be on the list, and those that wanted to be on it.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
getting,
that's
what
what
I'm getting at. And
Yeah.
please do not think I'm trying to dismiss historical buildings or whatever. This was an advisory list of houses that people thought had
It was
historic.
a list that was adopted by
were
the
old
town.
houses that people liked.
It was adopted by the town council in 2007.
Am I
So-
wrong?
so it became
You're
official.
wrong. You're wrong.
Mr. D.
So why can't, instead of, I'm back to the applicant. And just for those of you who don't know, because I was on the other side of this table for years and years and years, all over the state. Okay, so I know what it feels like to be on the other side as a builder, developer, landowner, whatever. So my question is, if we're looking for cellar holes or rock walls, why does the applicant need to go to the Heritage Commission to do that? Why can't staff tell the Heritage Commission, this lot is up for development, take a walk?
Even then,
Get it, or-
it's gonna get identified in the,
Or see,
We
why does
send
the
them
applicant?
this with the property.
Right.
yeah.
Instead
But-
of having the applicant come to them,
Sure.
you send the Heritage Commission that paperwork to
Put
say,
it on this list.
this property is being flagged or being earmarked for development, and now the applicant doesn't have an extra meeting for no reason.
Yeah,
Good point.
Just saying.
I don't disagree.
Mr. Chair, could we
Yes, sir.
update the list?
That list is.
I am trying to. I am trying to. First, I'm trying to identify what we feel as though should even apply to this list. What type of development should even apply to this list?
The other thing is, if that list was voluntary 15 years ago, a lot of those properties have changed hands, and the current owner might not want to be on it.
And
Well, you're
that,
talking about the not historical list.
Exactly.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair,
that list
can I
needs to
make
be
a
updated.
suggestion?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like me to take a stab at the list based on what our regulations say, what's currently happening?
What our
and maybe what
regulations
some
say
other
probably
towns have?
tells me there's gonna be 3 things on this list: historical buildings and structures, stone wall, and other historical
No, and I
resources.
said in what's currently happening through our process, meaning what's typically
Fair.
done.
I think so. Can we, is the board, all right. Do we want to identify things that should not, like I was just talking about, a residential subdivision with absolutely no historical significance should not be going to the Heritage Commission?
I support
But
staff's
they should be
recommendation.
notified. They should be notified that it's gonna happen, so that they can report.
Correct.
If
Absolutely.
Because-
110%.
Because that's what they do, and they know that stuff. and-
110%.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
at the last Heritage meeting, there was a discussion about some lists that the state has that I think you guys can access.
The Emmett program?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but.
David Ellis?
David
Thank you,
Ellis.
David Ellis, okay. Discuss those lists with us, and that would be a way of cleaning that up tremendously, because they can, if you guys can find the time, as I understand it, those lists become free to you after the 1st of January, and use those as a screen to identify those properties. Maybe there wouldn't be a need for us to touch those
We
residential
had it
subdivisions.
before. We had it a couple of years ago.
We did. With change of personnel, it went away.
Yeah. So it would be beneficial.
The state also does, even outside of January, offer free accounts to
Yeah.
certified local government boards. So
So I can put together a draft amendment to this, send it to the board in advance of some other meeting. I'm not gonna commit to a
Mr.
date.
D.
Could I ask Ms. Karen to also have legal look at the Heritage Historic Commission rules of procedure?
Sure.
Could I have her ask legal to take a look at that?
Sure, what are they looking at?
The rules of procedure.
What are they looking for?
Just
I think it's just.
read it and
Just
have
read
a
it.
comment.
It's just good practice to do that
Yeah.
with every single board and commission annually or biannually, just to make sure we've not
Sure.
missed anything.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Kelly's gonna provide us with something.
Are
that
applicants
we-
coming to Heritage Commissions with full-blown site plans?
So it varies. In the past,
Yeah.
the commission has been sent the full site plan. That is not always the case now. Sometimes applicants have a condensed presentation. Again, it varies.
And some will go through the whole thing also, like what we get, so it does vary.
That's something we need to take into consideration too. And again, this goes so much further than this of process.
Yes, we're really
but
talking about process.
big time. The real issue here.
But I do think
I think
this,
with
if you
this,
want
we
to do
need to
something
narrow
now,
down. With
this is the thing to tackle,
correct.
in my opinion.
With this, I think we should narrow down what the expectation is for the applicant to have with them
Yep.
at a Heritage Committee meeting.
Did you wanna ask about industrial zones?
Everybody wants Kelly to make up a draft list. I don't know. I was trying to
Well,
go
just
through all
to
that.
so right now, the commission is seeing
Everything.
all applications because the regulations
Don't tell them otherwise.
don't say otherwise necessarily. It just lists the committee and says design
So
review.
that's what I
goes.
was trying to get at is, as a board, what do we want to go through? The Heritage Commission was what I was trying to get at. We've identified we want commercial site plans to go to the Heritage Commission.
So did you wanna ask that
We-
question?
I'm getting there. We've identified that we do not want a residential site plan to go to the Heritage Commission, but to note any historical resources on it.
They should be notified that it's gonna happen.
Correct.
Building is gonna happen on that lot, so that they can do
Correct.
their due
And
diligence.
then the historical,
and then
the
inform-
Heritage Commission can
Inform
do.
somebody, either us or staff, that there's a potential issue.
Correct, and that would then trigger a response to have a residential subdivision go to the Heritage Commission. All right. How about, seems like we're getting plenty of them nowadays, PUDs. Are those going to the Heritage Commission? Do we feel as though a PUD is appropriate to send to a Heritage Commission? I'm not talking about the stuff inside of the PUD. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the plan itself of a PUD.
I chime in.
Probably not.
I
Kelly?
don't think it should go to Heritage because to me, they're not looking at a final document. That document doesn't even exist yet because this board hasn't approved it.
Correct. So, we've got an answer there.
That was a good one.
Thank you. See, I am smarter than I look.
Just to clarify, no PUD master plan
The
document.
master plan.
No PUD master plan
After
document.
that,
Thank
then-
you.
For that.
after
Now,
We don't see that now.
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't get those yet.
We wouldn't see it till there's, I think, till there's a site plan.
Right.
now, a commercial site plan inside of a PUD would go to them. A residential site plan inside of a PUD would not go to them. See where I'm getting at here?
Yeah,
If that residential site plan was apartments.
Uh-huh.
Do we
That is
have any-
multifamily. not
Multifamily.
residential.
Well, okay.
Do we have any
So that's another
regulation
ballgame.
that a
Because
builder has to
multifamily has to have a
report a
site plan.
cellar hole or anything with, that they might find when
I
they're
would say inside of the
preparing
survey
their?
is, inside of the engineer survey is gonna identify any of these cellar holes and
Sometimes.
stuff like that. Okay.
Usually they do,
Yes.
but it's not a regulation that we have.
Do we have any way for the Heritage Commission to go on property to investigate something if it's mentioned?
Have at it. It's New Hampshire. You might get
To-
shot. You
They
know?
have to-
Need to
If they
seek
have
the
permission of the owner.
property owner.
Right, I know, with permission.
I think
yes.
that's what Mr. D was getting at is the board gets notified of it. If the board decides they would like to go investigate it, they need to notify the town staff, who will then let the applicant know that, hey, by the way, we have the Heritage Committee coming to see if there's anything they need to identify to let the staff and planning board know.
Chris gets to walk the 600 acres of Woodmont Commons looking for a cellar hole.
Good deal. Yeah, there was plenty.
Um,
It was a bunch.
Industrial, is
Let's-
that going to Heritage?
Industrial.
No.
Personally, I don't feel as though it needs to because it's a.
We have Ann and Arthur. They know
So-
their colors.
There's gonna be consistency of design too, because I think that's the only thing we tend to look at. Anything industrial doesn't fit in with what's surrounding it. There's no particular. It doesn't get the scrutiny like something commercial, lines 102 or lines 28.
But this is exactly
like
what
that.
I'm saying. It doesn't really get scrutiny from you guys. You just say, does it mesh into everything else?
Yeah, typically, anything commercial, industrial, we tend to just let it go through as is. It's a big metal building every single time.
Then it's a waste of time for
Then
the
it's
applicant.
exactly. Then it's a.
I think all the Planning Commission needs is just a rendering of something. And then
So-
But why
that's it.
do it? Why do
Why
it if
do
it's
it?
just going to be a pass?
If it's something that is a pass-through item, which the chair just told us that it's a pass-through item,
Typically.
why do it?
I mean, can't staff tell the applicant, by the way, make sure that your building fits in with the stuff around it, or or planning board?
I'm gonna go one step further here. Can we give?
Look
book.
Maybe get me started on the lookbook. Remember that one I tried updating? There's still one from 1998 on here, so don't even get me started about the lookbook. Can we give staff a little? Can we give staff a little bit of decision here? And if there is some industrial building that staff feels as though needs a little extra reviewing by the Heritage Commission, can we give that to staff?
Yes.
Agree?
Yes.
All right. Look at that. Multifamily, I feel as though needs to go through the Heritage Commission.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody agree, multifamily should be going through the Heritage Commission.
Yes.
I think we've kind of hit for the most part, a little bit of everything.
What about
right?
the institutional?
That would follow under commercial, no? Because what's the zoning for?
Or industrial. It's either commercial.
It's
or
either
industrial.
commercial or industrial, exactly.
So what about
So
just
an
the-
industrial
Well, that's
would
what
not.
I'm asking. Is
That would be to the
Discretionary.
discretion of the board. However, a commercial, something in C2 is gonna go to the Heritage Commission.
So to be clear, the 9-item checklist thing that I'm looking at right now, Kelly is gonna provide us with some guidance on what she thinks should be on there or not.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Sure, you got it.
I want to add to that a little bit, to give Kelly some guidance, to give us guidance, to give the Heritage Commission guidance,
Yes.
to give applicants guidance.
Yes. Well said. Well said,
Through the
Mr. Chair.
lookbook.
So the applicant can just talk
I
directly
think
with staff.
this is my opinion. I think the things that should be looked at here are historical buildings and structures, stone walls, and other historical resources. I think architectural design needs to be broadened a little bit, or more specified to include.
Narrowed.
Yes, to include roof types, facades or storefronts, as well as associated materials to those roof types and facades. And I think that we've already said street naming and development completely doesn't apply. I'm really indifferent to signage. Back to
That would be the design of the sign itself.
I can't even talk about signage because it's a disaster.
So was signage, again, we have regulation for it. If there are
Correct.
too many signs, they're not gonna be allowed.
Correct.
If
So
you're looking for
so
input on
I'm looking
signage.
for the architectural input. Again, architectural. To me, that is what this commission is the architectural input of how a building is going to look. The architectural look of the sign is something they would comment on. You're chuckling.
Yeah, the typical discussion on signage is, gee, we like monument signs versus other types of signs, and wouldn't it be nice if it matched the brick on your building? That is the
That's architectural
typical
and-
discussion.
Correct. Correct. I think that,
I'll be honest with you, I wish you actually said it that way to the applicants. I wish you did, and I'm gonna pick on you a little bit because you don't. And I watched almost 3 years of your meetings in the last 3 weeks, because I have nothing to do all day.
Comes with the white hair.
And
You
that's
retired,
not.
Tony?
Sorry?
You retired?
Nah.
Ski area wasn't open that day.
Exactly, yeah.
First day Waterville Valley was open, I was there. Other than that, I was watching your meetings. So I will say that, A. B, I wish during your meetings, and you almost did it at the last meeting that you had, I wish you would say, this is an advisory meeting. We are making advisory comments. You kind of almost did it last meeting. You were very close. And
So
I
you
think
want
at
us to
one
tell
time-
the applicant up front, in a roundabout kind of way, whatever we say here doesn't really matter, and you should just go to the planning board.
Yeah.
That's more or less what you're saying.
They're-
In which case, why have us talk to them at all?
They have a right to know that you
They
are
do
an
know that.
advisory.
Of course, these people aren't
committee.
stupid, Tony. They're sophisticated
Some of them.
teams of people that
Some
put
of them.
these plans together. They
Un-
know.
Understand,
the deal
they
when
work
come
in
before
many
us.
states, in many towns. And when they come here, based on the research that I did over the past month or so, this is unique. Londonderry is unique
Gotta move things along.
in that manner. And so these people are coming to you, probably never having to have done that before.
The other thing to keep in mind is that they are advisory on some things, but not on others. So they can't say that they're an
Because it's a
advisory
dual,
role.
because it's
Exactly.
a dual role.
So,
Yeah.
so they
Triple
can't,
role.
they can say we're advisory on this.
And I liked your comment earlier that I think you said something about, for these three things that we're
Yeah,
gonna talk
block
about
off those
now.
three things as go, no go, and the rest are.
Correct, yeah.
all right, all right.
But-
So, back to architectural design. I think we understand what that's inclusive of, and I think we need to, inside of this process that we have going on, I think we need to come up with what is a more clearly identified set of items that an applicant needs to bring, because I do not feel as though a full site plan is necessary to go to the Heritage Commission. Because theoretically, if I were doing this, I would be going to the Heritage Commission with my conceptual design to get their input and then make changes.
As
So-
well as landscaping.
Correct.
Well,
So-
there's also-
So I don't
So you
feel as
kinda
though,
have to have-
I don't feel as though there should be they don't need plans, they need concepts.
Well, but
They need renderings.
Remember too, one thing that hasn't come up is, back to process, this is a timing issue as well. Because you all only meet every other month, right?
Correct.
So there's some developers that are already 9-10 weeks in, and they know they're gonna have a meeting with us, so by the time they get to these folks, they're done.
And if they are, that's great, but if they're not, don't say you don't have a plan, go home.
Right, so here, in my notes, that I wasn't gonna bring up tonight, but now I will, because I'm talking about it, why are they not meeting every month?
We discussed that at the last meeting, didn't we say that they need to look into adding additional meetings to make sure that we are?
Heritage does add additional meetings as needed.
No?
Yeah, we do schedule special meetings as necessary, and we offer that to our applicants pretty often.
That means they've already come to you, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we just have,
No, not always. A lot of, actually, a fair amount, staff will meet with an applicant.
and then you'll reach out to the Heritage Commission?
We'll get the design review application, send the sheet out, and there have been some instances where we've scheduled a special meeting because we have too many projects.
Would it be easier or more difficult for the staff if the Heritage Commission had a scheduled meeting monthly? It's 9:48 at
For
night, you
staff?
don't need to answer that.
It would be more difficult to staff the meetings.
don't even go down that road.
Considering you're basically looking at the staff right there.
What do you mean? You don't go to the, you don't go to the.
That's it.
She does.
Where do you sit?
Right here.
Right there.
All right. Well, there's that old rock and a hard
But
place.
isn't it easier to cancel a meeting than it is to schedule one?
Absolutely.
I think
If
those
you
are all
want my
procedural.
opinion,
Ask Kelly.
I think scheduling special meetings is working just fine.
All right.
Okay,
Staff has spoken.
that's fine.
The entire staff has spoken.
I have two wonderful staff in my department. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We don't ever see them.
They're not required to attend meetings.
Correct.
Although Mike attends conservation.
Correct.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. We got a little bit of direction here. Kelly, do you feel like you have a little bit of direction here?
Absolutely, you got it.
The board, do we have any more direction that we want to supply?
I think we're given enough.
Yeah, we beat the horse pretty good.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on.
Can you say that real quick? Just talking about the liability, and everybody mentioned potential liability with not disclosing. In the last meeting, we discussed just giving a disclosure about being advisory only. Isn't that a solution we can do right away, so we're kind of limited the liability that we're exposed to not doing that?
You got a point.
Because we discussed it last
Very
time, where we all
worded.
agreed to that, and
Yeah.
then you just said, he almost did it, and then he says, well, why should I do it? People are just not going to listen to what we're saying. Well, it's an easy fix that we can do right now to kind of limit
Got
liability.
a good point.
Yep.
There was a big concern about liability to start this with. And I disagree with your comment of, well, if we tell them that it's advisory, I disagree with that, because I think they're still gonna very much take, and I feel as though 99% of the time, they do take advice that's given to them
And,
from
and it's all
Heritage.
about the phraseology as well. If it's, we are gonna present our advisory comments to the planning board for final decision. Well, if the applicant knows.
That's wrong.
That it's going
They're
to.
gonna present their design review comments to the planning board. Again, which goes back to the bigger picture of how much of a,
Whatever.
yes.
Pay no attention of the man behind the curtain.
Pay no
do you
attention to the
understand?
fact.
Do you see what I just did there, though? So now the applicant, to your point, are not stupid. They're gonna say, well, Heritage is suggesting this, and they're gonna suggest that to the planning board, but still, from a legal standpoint, you use the word advisory.
Sure.
And
We've
I-
taken to saying that we will recommend approval, but I can change it to say we will advise approval.
even better. Love that.
Or
Thank
this
you,
is our
Mr.
Chair,
advice,
I'd like
and then
to-
the details underneath that.
I gotta, yeah,
To
I think
table
I know.
this until,
All right.
Yeah, we beat the horse
table
pretty
this
good.
discussion.
Yeah, but I do have to say, I disagree with that. You're not advising or recommending approval. You're providing design review comments. They are part of the design review committee. They are providing design review comments. They are not providing an approval. They are not providing a recommendation. They are providing comments.
Right, they are advising the planning board on their comments about that plan,
Correct.
which is what the Conservation Commission does.
Correct.
It'd be no different from conservation, fire department, police department, assessor.
They will recommend on their design review, just as Stantec does, just as the fire department does.
Just as staff
Just
does.
as the police station does, just as staff does. They are recommending comments.
Okay.
So that's
Mr.
just my 2
Chair,
points, but we have enough here.
Mr. Chair, as the chair, I think you should write up a recommendation to the Heritage Commission, what you would like them to say about recommending to the planning board.
Why not? Absolutely, I'd love to.
We're getting crazy. We might
And
as
then
well-
I'll start
we might as well
recommending.
play it out.
If we're doing that, I'm gonna start recommending process too.
Yeah,
as well
if
play it
if
out.
it gets after 10
All right.
PM, the productivity is straight down.
For the record, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make note that we did have a public hearing and people participated in the public hearing tonight. And I think we have spoken enough about this topic.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Motion second, approved, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.